sponsor of Gather Together, Grow Together. We provide transportation, affordable transportation. All right, y'all. You know what time it is. This is the Conduit. It is Friday night. It is January 19th, 2024. Whew, man, the month is already almost over. And that's how it goes, right? If you started working on your New Year's resolutions, I really hope that it's going well. It takes about 3 weeks to create a habit, so you're right there. Keep going. If you fell off because of holiday celebrations, that's okay. Hop back on the horse and get to. Ain't nothing to but to do. But what are we here for tonight? Tonight we're here. We're going to be interviewing our guest, Shannon Turner, to make sure everything is good here. Oh, that sounds good. We're going great. I'm going to stall a little bit for time that more of you come in. I see you're already pouring in. So very thankful that you decided to spend your Friday night here with us, which is fantastic. It's very awesome. I'll be sharing a lot of different information about Shannon throughout the evening, one of which is his website. And so we want to make sure that you have access to all the information. Let me go ahead and pop that on the screen right there. So you have access to that. You can read about his campaign and what he is about. Also, let me go ahead and just kind of throw that up on the screen there because we're already ready to go. This is how we do when we're prepared. And so we got some more folks coming in here. All right. So go ahead and take that off for now. And we'll come back to it. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to have Shannon introduce himself. I asked for a bio late, but that's okay. I could read about Shannon, but I think it's actually better to hear from the person. So we should do that. Now, I've already kind of prepped Shannon to look at the camera. His camera's over there. I'm not looking at the camera. I'm looking straight ahead, so I'm already breaking my own rules in here. So let me go ahead and with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Shannon Turner. Shannon, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for allowing me to be here more.
Oh, I appreciate you.
It.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to start off with just, who are you? Just tell us a little bit about your background. I know you're a military veteran. Just kind of tell us the story of Shannon Turner, kind of up until this point, and then we'll get into the election piece.
Okay. Wow. Born and raised out of Circle, Ohio. I have a younger brother and a mom. A single mother raised me and my brother. Coming out of that, family. It was all about family for us, but most importantly, it was all about community. My mom and my family relied on community to help get us through and help keep an eye on us, and that's where I kind of got my foundation and roots in the community and everything else. So from there, my mom was a warehouse worker. She worked hard. She worked midnights. She did the bump and grind to get us what we needed to make sure that we were there to get our education and get through everything. She taught us what was right, what was wrong. She said that as long as you're there and root in community, your community will help and be rooted into you and help take care of you. So for me, there, I ended up going into military.
Well, what made you go to the military?
Well, my family I have a couple uncles that went into the military, one Air Force, one Marine. And so for me, I took it as a way to better myself, better my family, and an opportunity to get out and see the world. So
what did you do in the military?
Well, I started out as a cannon crew member and then ended up going into special weapons.
Okay.
And so from there, I ended up also working in supply. But I ended up being a NCOIC of my own, which was basically I worked for my first sergeant and my battery commander. and that entailed me running certain things of the unit, like all the PT programs, all the administrative programs that we had, prepared for inspections, and also did the UCMJ, which is Uniform Code of Military Justice. So whenever somebody or something happened, we had to, prep for either a trial or someone had to go and get an Article 15 read, which was a type of punishment. I did all that paperwork and legwork. So for me, and I was also the family liaison. And then I also, started that over in Germany.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
When I went over to my first duty station in Bayreuth, I was the NCOIC for the evacuation of our unit. So I had to help coordinate evacuation routes, and then I was a liaison to the German government. So for me, that was another piece that really tied the community portion of it. Different community, but yet still the same community.
Right.
And everything. So
how long did you serve?
10 plus years.
Wow.
15.
Yeah. 15.
Yeah.
You need 20 to retire. What made you get out?
It got to a point where some things was taking place, and I felt like it was time for me to go.
I had a corpsman friend, and he was working at the Naval Hospital, and he had 10 years in and could pretty much write his own ticket. He's like, I gotta go. I gotta go. I was like, man, you're 10 years, and he was young.
Yeah.
I was like, man, he got 10. He was like, no, I gotta go. And he left, went down to College Station, went to college, actually flew down to his graduation.
Oh, nice.
And he's thriving.
Nice.
So I understand it.
Yeah.
Some people are like, how could you? You were so close. But when it's time to go, it's time to go.
It's time. Yeah, and that's the truth. And for me, I felt like that was my time. I reached a point where I thought that I was couldn't do anymore. Mm-hmm. And I reached a point where, it was time for me just to say, okay, it's time for me to change. I've got nothing else to give or anything. And so instead of being a hindrance, time for me to change and step out in that civilian world, as we like to say.
Nice. So what'd you do? You leave the military?
I left the military, and it was hard. It was really hard because you're used to so much structure and things being in place. So when you process out and you get out into the civilian side of things, it's different because you don't have that structure.
Right.
There's nothing. And you're not really prepared for what's about to come. So for me, I had a hard time trying to transition everything over to civilian life. So I ended up, being homeless, couch surfing, sleeping in sheds, cars,
wow.
Sometimes on a bench.
Okay.
Not necessarily knowing where my meal might come from one point to another. So, it was a difficult transition because, I didn't understand it. And then filling out the job applications and going to interviews and everything else, and not being able to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
So
even though you served your country,
even though I served my country,
wow.
At that time, it was something that was different. Mm-hmm. And
were you here in Washington?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there at Fort Lewis, now Fort Lewis McCord, but I transferred out at Fort Lewis. And again, things were not in place like they are right now. Mm-hmm. So, and the way I look at it is whatever you go through, what you get to do and how you get to do it, builds character. You get through it the best that you can, and then you keep, pressing forward. So for me, making sure I stayed in contact with my family back home.
Where's back home?
Circleville, Ohio. Mom, steadily on the phone with mom.
Okay.
That's it. OH, baby. So for me, it was that, and and I'm a religious guy, very religious. So it was dark. It was hard. Going through some things and everything else, and then suffering from PTSD on top of it. Made things really difficult, but you persevere.
So let me ask you, we both work with the unhoused population. Um, any words of encouragement that you can give as you're telling your story? What pulled you through those dark moments for you to get to the other side, to the light?
Making sure that you don't give up. And, the one thing I tell everyone, and it's, within that person, because you don't know what that person's going through, that person's story. So you coming up saying hello or providing a resource outlet for that person,
Mm,
or just standing there and listening and having a conversation could literally turn that person's life around.
gotcha.
I had a great group of friends for myself that helped support me during that time frame. But my light was the fact that resources and people would not give up on me. Now, and then you have that pride because you don't want to tell everybody what you're
Mm,
going through. But you have to swallow that pride and just put it out there because you can't get the help and assistance you need if they don't know. So for me, it was the resources, it was the fact of my connection back home, and then my community, um, allowing my community to help me.
I think that's powerful because a lot of times people will isolate, right? They feel like they're in it alone or no one
Yeah.
cares. There is the pride factor. And so they're fighting against all these things. And if they keep that community, as you said,
Mhm.
you can get through it.
You can.
Right.
I mean, and that's the truth. I mean, I sit and I see this as I walk through the streets here in Bremerton and elsewhere. Um, and it was very interesting too because you had some of the same issues overseas, but very little because of the fact of the way their culture and everything is set up and the way their government service is set up.
Mm.
So, they really, really do emphasize community and taking care of the people. But here, um, it's all different. Everybody views it differently. Um, but for me, I stay grounded because I see and talk. They're humans, they're living beings. They're just like me, just like you.
Yeah.
You just don't know what that situation is. And so, to treat them differently, there's no reason to because they're there. They're going through their battles and their struggles. And again, like I said, holding a conversation, providing a resource, shaking somebody's hand, could just turn and provide that little sliver of a change that can grow. And then next thing you know, they're coming out and fulfilling that promise to themselves that they may have once had by getting the resources, getting the helps, getting into a substance abuse program, and everything that's provided. Um,
And it's not too late. You're not too old.
it's never
Don't worry about what I should have been already over here. If I
no,
had made these mistakes, don't worry about that.
it's all gone. It's
Mhm.
all out the door. The way I see it, every day you wake up, you start fresh and new. It's a new day. It's a new way. It's a new morning, and it's a new you. Still the same you, but yet a new you because you don't know what that day is.
Mm.
How you wake up and get up and go. That takes how your day's going to be, and that's the way I see that, and that's the way I view it because I love my community, and I love the people within my community. And it doesn't matter where you're at, who you are, what you've been through, or anything as such. Because that's what community is. It's acceptance of each other and acceptance of one another and acceptance of whatever's going on to help and benefit those who don't have that. So,
So let's pick up on the other side where you've come into the light now. One thing I'll say to folks is, you hear this saying a lot: don't make a permanent solution to a temporary situation, right?
yeah.
But pick up on the other side. You've come out of the other side. You've used your community. You swallowed your pride, and here you are now. Talk about that. Where are you going from there?
Wow. That journey and everything because it all started with my daughter, Ashlyn, and that Head Start program at KCR. because of that, that allowed me to understand exactly and use my voice of who I am and being a parent and to advocate on behalf of my child. Because education is key. No matter where you're at or what you're doing, you need to be educated in order to go and do what you need to do and go to that next level. So when I found out that they had a parent policy council, I was kind of voluntold,
Okay.
which was a great thing. But when that happened, and then I started realizing that the people there were just the same kind of people like me. They were there to advocate. Victoria Hill, oh my gosh, oh, awesome. She was the first person I talked to, and was the first person that I tried to emulate because she was chair, because she was about the kids, she was about the education, she was about the resources and everything that was needed and required, and that was promised by the state and the federal government to help our kids break down and get through certain barriers that were needed in order to do that. So for me, that just kind of added air underneath my wings and gave me the confidence. So with that, I decided to run for chair for the Parent Policy Council. So myself and Drayton Jackson were the first Black fathers to be policy chair, president, and vice chair and vice president
Nice.
of the KSR Policy Council. And then, we went to Washington, D.C. on parent ambassadors with Joel and Katie.
Wow.
That program is something that just a wealth of knowledge and information, but they're there to provide you with what you need to educate yourself, to build yourself up, to make you stronger, and knowledgeable. So Drayton and I went to Washington, D.C. for a meeting there. Him and I were among 9 fathers, I believe, in a room of 900 people.
Wow.
And I think for us, that said a lot. And then we got a chance to speak and say why we were there and what we were doing. Because when you're in a room like that, you're in a room with a lot of women. So for me, it was, well, what about the dads? What about the males who are trying to do right and be there for their kids? We have a voice. We have something to say just as much as, the women parents do. And the single fathers out there. We didn't have anywhere to go or anything. So, it was kind of, and then for us being Black and doing this as well, it's kind of making a standpoint of it. So Drayton and I made a pact as we went and saw the Martin Luther King monument there in D.C. and seeing that structure and standing there and reading and knowing the history, you're just in awe. Tears flowing, and just understanding what they went through, what he went through, and how he did it. For me to be there meant a lot. So Drayton Jackson, that's my brother, love him to death. Him and I made a pact that we were going to do something for our communities, to better ourselves, to better our communities, and to be there for our communities, and make sure that we have a voice and to be seen and heard. So with that, that just put me on a journey.
What year was this?
Oh, wow.
I'm
Yeah, you are. Yes, you are. I would say
pre-OC or post-OC?
This was pre-OC.
Okay.
Very pre-OC. So I'd say 2014, 15 timeframe, 16, somewhere in there.
Okay.
I had just started going back to school and everything. So, and we were both paralleling each other. And Drayton was getting back into school. And at that time, just as I was getting into OC, he had started the club and everything for, I think it was the Black African American Club that he started, that he was president of. And then he went on to become OC president. So I took over the club. And then he left, and then I ran for was the president. And I did that for 2 years. And so
I was there for both of your tenures.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So for me, that was the life alternating thing, because now I was in a place, and it was 2016, because that's when, President Trump got elected and the change started taking place. And so with that happening, that was the time, because we had to come together and figure out, oh wow, what are we going to do? How are we really going to do this? And what kind of ride are we in for? So being student body president, I was all for the students. I wanted the students to know that they had, regardless, a safe place, because LGBTQ, blacks, the minority community, and the population, we took notice on that election day. We took notice, and everything, and then things changed. There were some threats that came down later on, that we had to deal with at OC.
Wow, really? To the college?
Yeah,
wow.
To college.
Okay.
People were kind of, lashing out, and, at the LGBTQ community, and everything. So, things were a little unrest. So for myself, being student body president, it was a matter of staying in touch with the student body, but also staying in touch with the community and letting the community know that we were here, what was going on, and what was taking place. So with that, made things aware. That's when I found out I had students sleeping in vehicles, nowhere to go, and I had students coming in with nothing to eat for lunch, and everything. And I had a great student government with myself, and everything, with my vice presidents and my chief financial officer. We really did what we could do for the students. We made things aware. We even had a night where we dedicated clothing and food and everything, homeless night, where we slept outside on one of the coldest nights with a fire, to bring awareness to just what was taking place. So that kind of led, and then that gave me the opportunity to go and speak with, our state representatives down in Olympia. They gave me a platform, and everything. And then it allowed me to go out and touch base with the community as well, but also our local government. So I went to city council and introduced myself in Bremerton, Hallsville. I don't think I made it out to Bainbridge Island, but I made them aware of who I was, what we were doing, and what we were trying to do,
What was happening?
and what was going on, and that, hey, we're here. Include us, because I'm going to ask for help if need be, and we're going to show up and show support and be there. So that's where that was, and everything. So it allowed me to really hone in, and then find out about government policy. At the time, it was Representative Hanson, and everything, dealing with student aid and those barriers for myself and for veterans and family members, working alongside him about the grants, and then working with Sherry Appleton and Senator Rothfuss at that time, and State Representative Sherry Appleton, who was there. I've been talking about the Head Start community as well, because I still advocate for early education. I love early education in my kids and K through 12, because that's where everything is at.
When you say that's where everything is at, touch on that. Why is that so important?
Because it starts with our kids. I mean, if you really want to get down to it, it starts with the family values and traditions at home. But the education our kids get gives them the empowerment to understand what's going on. So they need that from the early start, and then getting into the system. Now, I know the system's not, the greatest, and there's barriers there. But again, you need to try and focus and ingrain yourself into getting that education, so that you have that knowledge, because they say knowledge is power, and in a lot of cases it is.
Only if you use it.
Only if you and only if you know how to use it.
Yeah.
which is key. So for me, and then coming up when I was going through school, what I faced and had to go through just to make sure that I was getting the education that that I was supposed to get, because I didn't know, but my parents did.
Mm-hmm.
But so for me, our kids is the key, because the more they know, the more they understand, and the more knowledgeable they are about everything that's going on, then the better off our community is going to be. They can take those traditions and then what they've learned and take it to another level and enhance their community, enhance their surroundings. So that's why I say that's really where it's at, because once they get out of high school and if they're not going on to college, then that's the real world. You need to be ready and understand what's going on. So for me today, my kids, Danielle and I try to ingrate and engross them wherever we go about what's going on, what's taking place, how it is, and how important it is, and what it means.
Okay.
So from that point, and then I became a campaign manager for Sherry Appleton, thanks to Val Torrance, because she's like, hey, because I took her class, government. She's like, hey, Sherry's looking for a campaign manager. So are you interested? And I had just graduated and everything. So, was like, well, okay, let's see. So I went. Next thing you know, I was a campaign manager, which worked out great. Sherry was awesome. She taught me a lot. She helped me understand the ins and outs and the intricacies of government, how government works. But most importantly, she was community. She was there for her community. And she's like, Shannon, whatever you do, when you show up, you don't speak, you listen.
Mm-hmm.
You listen, you understand, you take it in. And then you come back and then you ask questions, because then they know that you listen and that you're serious. And that way you can take it back and then address those issues at the next level, because we may not know that. And I'm supposed to provide her with what is going on and the communications from the community about those barriers, and the things that they're facing and what they like, because she can't be everywhere. So she valued that. She valued her community. And that's what that was. So for me, again, there you have it, community. So I got to go out and sit in different meetings and listen and understand how things worked, how bills got passed, how bills were discussed, and some of the barriers. Because a lot of times, they may be putting a certain bill in place, but not understand that this bill is on another barrier on for this population down here.
Right.
And so, bringing that voice back and saying, hey, if you do this, here's the bigger picture, because now you're putting a barrier in for this population. And then what are they going to do? And so that's how you sit and you try to get the equity across the board. Because for Sherry, it didn't matter. It didn't matter who you were. You were her constituent, and she represented you, and she tried to do the best that she could to represent you, regardless.
Right.
And that's the one thing I learned and loved about her, because with Sherry, it was you either liked her or you didn't, but you respected her.
You respected her.
You respected her.
All right. So for all of you that are just tuning in, welcome. You're watching an episode of The Conduit with our guest here tonight, which is Shannon Turner. This was a long time coming. I've been telling Shannon since probably summertime.
Yeah.
I was like, hey man, I'm gonna have you on.
Yeah.
Gonna have you on. And I got a lot going on. You asked me like, when do you rest? Like, you got so much happening.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just got to be intentional. It's like, all right, Fridays, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
We got to get it in. And then with your campaign, it's like, all right, we're gonna make sure that we get this going.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're here. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We are going to save some space for questions. So if you do have some, you can put them in the chat and we'll try to get to the ones that we can get to. Right now, Shannon is kind of going over his background. So we've got an understanding of who he is and what shapes the man that Shannon is today, and the type of community member he is today, and why it's important for his campaign run. And I appreciate you giving, a space in the space.
I'm glad to. You do. Look, you're important. You do a lot of great work. You reach a lot of people. And without you, a lot of people wouldn't know where to go, how to get anywhere, what is needed, what is out there. So I thank you. I give you, praise and glory.
I appreciate that.
Wherever I'm at, you're there. You're the voice. You're putting it out there. You're doing, and you're showing up for your community just as much as I am, if not more. Because you're ground level. You're literally feet, road, wheels on the road,
wheels on the road,
and going. So the places I've been, you've been, So it's good to see that, and it's good to understand that the community is accepting that exactly for what it is. So, maybe you need to have a role reversal.
Well, maybe one day, but tonight is about you. So let me take the camera off me.
Okay.
Go back to Shannon. It ain't me tonight. I could get on here and pontificate and wax poetic, whatever. But no, I appreciate the kind words. And
That's true.
There's a saying that says, if not you, who? You hear all those kind of boilerplate sayings, during campaign season.
Yeah.
But it really is it. If you're seeing that there's an issue, then why not be the one to try to make that change?
Yeah.
And so, that's really what it's about. We've got one of our drivers is heading out tomorrow at 7 a.m. to take someone to medical detox out in Spokane.
Ooh.
All right, yeah, come on. So
safe journey. Safe
oh man,
travels,
we just went 3 days ago, right? And
that's what
so
I'm saying.
that's a life-changing opportunity for them. And just to kind of go back a little bit during that time of you and Drayton at the college, I was teaching there at the time, and even today I tell people that there were so many unhoused folks that were bathing in the bathroom.
Yes.
I taught a lot of night classes, right?
Yeah.
And give a 10-minute break, and folks aren't back from the break, and it's like, well, there's a line in the bathroom because that was the kind of private time to try to run and kind of clean up a little bit, and telling some of the students, hey, you can't sleep on campus. The police going to the graveyard, can't sleep in the graveyard, and folks trying to do everything they can, right? That they're holding on to education is going to be the thing that gets me out of it.
Yeah.
That's what it was for me. And that's what it is for a lot of people. And that's what we're told, right?
Yeah.
So just a really big deal. And even today, people are surprised. Oh, people are homeless going to the college? And I don't mean I'm at Sally's, which is homelessness, or I'm couch surfing. I'm talking about I'm in the street trying to make this thing happen, or I'm in my car trying to make it happen. And there's just so many that I've seen come through then and now still trying to do it. So it's a huge deal.
It is. It really is. And you hope that at some point in time you find a way that get some type of housing that'll be able to address those concerning issues for those students, because they're risking everything that they have to get that education and do what they can to better themselves and better their families and everything. And my thought process is that no one should not have a roof and four walls. Some way, somehow, we got to find a way to get that done. That's pretty much, and that's key. There's a lot of people out there making sacrifices to do that, and to address those concerning issues and everything. So, which again leads us to me and where I'm at in my journey, because being there and working in the legislature for 4 years, going through COVID and everything, when Representative Appleton retired, and then working alongside now Representative Simmons, and everything. So, which is key, and you see different things, because COVID tore the Band-Aid off of everything, and opened everything up. And so, dealing with that, dealing with different issues, then of course, the George Floyd, um, that in itself just set a precedence like none other, because now you're dealing with that, and then the Black Lives Matter movement, um, which really put the focus on minorities um, and the LGBTQ community, which really came together to support each other. So
It's a perfect
know,
storm, right? Happening during
yeah,
COVID when you've got the lockdowns and the world had to pay attention to that.
yeah, I mean, literally. And then no one could do anything, no one could go anywhere, so things just kind of, bubbled up and escalate and everything else on top of that. So you really couldn't address anything at a certain time in a certain place. But the legislative session that year that went through focused a lot on just that, focused a lot on racial concerns and racial issues, focused a lot on some housing concerns. And but most importantly, then you notice that you had the mental health and behavioral issues that were coming up along with the substance abuse issues, that now, so things were no longer taboo to where, they used to be taboo. You couldn't talk about it.
Right.
So, seeing that and looking at how they handle that and everything. And I'll tell you, no one's perfect or anything such. And, you do what you think is right. And they did what they thought, was right at the time and everything. It wasn't perfect. And there was a lot of things that, you had to come back and sit down and think about and bring some more people to the table to discuss and then clear up later on. But it was a good point. It was a good point. And, the people, well, I'll say some of the legislatures, especially those at the Black Caucus or the minorities of that, stood up and stood out.
Nice.
Really did, because that's a hard challenge to take on.
Yeah.
Because everybody's not going to agree with what you say, and they're definitely not going to agree with what you do. But when you look at it from a different standpoint and a different viewpoint, and you bring that into play, now you get certain people who try to understand and shed a different light on that, because it was going on for a while, and it's still going on
For a good long while, right?
yeah. But you address it the best way, and and that's what they did.
So tell me, so you kind of left off, you're a campaign manager, and what do you do from there? What else is going on?
Legislative assistant and everything with Rep Appleton and Rep Simmons, and then from there, I went to work at Peninsula Community Health Services, which is fabulous.
Doing what? What are you there?
Nonprofit organization. Now I am the community development administrator there. But one good thing about that was I was also, before that, I was also sitting on the board as a board member for 5 years. So it really gave me an opportunity to see who and what PCHS was, and the work that they were doing. Their leadership group, led by Jennifer Carter Moss and Lynette Bird, are both just amazing, because what they see and how they handle everything. And Jennifer and Lynette are about community.
Mm.
And that's the one thing that I just love and I thrive on, is the fact that it is community first. They're there for community. They're there for the patients. And you can. And the fact that it is really, it's one of the most, I would say, one of the most equally balanced, I won't say equally, but more balanced minority organizations that I've had the opportunity to see.
In what way? In regards to like representation
of
like
LGBTQ.
doctors,
I mean, well,
higher level staff.
LGBTQ,
Mhm.
the minorities, those who, are getting a second chance coming out of that system,
Gotcha.
and everything, they have an opportunity. They see you as you,
Gotcha.
the doctors, the providers, because when you're a community provider, it's not the easiest thing, because you're seeing all walks of life, and because of that, this is what PCH does, because they don't see barriers. They come and see you where you're at, um, and they're there for you. And like I said, they see you as a patient. They see you as a person as a whole. And that's one of the great things that that leadership group has at this organization is community. So for me, it was like a hand in glove
Okay.
because community. Um, and with the leadership and what they're doing, we're continually to expand. We're continually looking at how we can better our relations with the community and get the community because you know that you hear that you know who we are, but do you really know who we are and what we provide and all the services that we provide and everything? So
So tell me a little bit about what does your position entail?
petition entails communication out to the community, and then we go to certain events, and then certain organizations might ask for us to come and present to provide some of a background of who we are and what we do in the community and everything, and then some of the things of what we may have going on down in the future, and sometimes to provide better relationships and that be that liaison, so to speak, between the community and the organization and everything. So for me, it's getting the opportunity to talk about an organization that I love and I love representing because of the work that they do and how they do it and the fact that they're there for the community and everything.
It's pretty awesome. You talked about diversity being there.
Yeah.
And we think about systemic racism, right? How are these systems in place? And a lot of people that can't identify what the systems are. One of those systems can be an organization does have BIPOC individuals or LGBT individuals, but those positions are typically the lower level positions. I'm like, oh no, they're here, but they're the janitorial staff or the kitchen staff. So you're saying that there's doctors and nurses and PAs and people throughout it, people as yourself, for instance. And that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, it's a community place. I mean, it's very respectful, and people come and enjoy the work that they do there. Working up in our administration department and everything. You know, I'm loud. I have that voice and everything, but we're all there. We support one another, and if somebody is having a rough time or something, we kind of rally around and lift the spirits up and everything else. But it is community. It is a work community, and that's what they try to entail, even at the clinics that we operate out of. It's the same thing. It's a community. Everybody is there to support everybody. And again, you're seeing the patients. You're seeing patients from Sally's coming through our clinic, and they get treated with the same respect they would be as if a millionaire walked in. It would be the same. There's no difference in everything because that is who they see.
Mhm.
They see you, and they treat you with the decency and respect that you deserve to be treated with. So it doesn't matter. Um, so that's one of the benefits of being there because of the fact that then it allows me also to sit here and understand exactly what's going on with the medical industry and get better knowledge of how the medical industry and how things work and how things run, and then what I may be able to address because I wear many different hats within the community, and you just never know what a little bit of piece of information that you have that you're provided with could go out and change somebody's life, like we said.
Facts. What I'll say is my little plug for Peninsula Health. I was attending there as a patient. Oh man, I can't remember how long it was, but there was a black PA, and it was one of the few black male doctors that was my physician,
Mm-hmm.
and he was fantastic. He was awesome, right? He asked questions. He listened. He talked
Yeah.
about how important that is, and it is some of the best healthcare I felt that I got, where I was an informed patient, and he kept it real too, right? told you what you need to do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but he gave you the information. Yeah, he gave you, I would say, over information, but it's not over information. It's just there was a lack, right?
Exactly.
And so I'll never forget him. I just don't remember his name, but he was a PA, and he even explained what a PA was versus a regular physician. I'm a physician assistant. So he was really awesome.
Yeah, we're lucky to have those people. The
So
community's lucky to have those people.
yeah, no, absolutely. So as we get into, your campaign,
Yeah.
I'd be remiss not to talk about the fact that you are right now, were you the president of the NAACP?
No,
You're
vice
the
president.
You're the vice
president.
now,
Yes.
but were you president at one point in time?
No, I've
Okay.
never been president of the NAACP. That was Judge Flood, and then President Harris, who is currently the president now of the NAACP.
So how long have you been involved with the NAACP?
Oh.
And why are you involved with the NAACP?
And that's a good question, Juan, because at first, we were like, well, you hear about the NAACP, but you don't really know the background. You know some of the history of the NAACP. But Danielle and I both joined at the same time, and we connected with Tracy, Judge Flood, and everything. And it was learning exactly what the NAACP does and what it means to this community and those people within this community. And getting that history and understanding that here you can make a difference. Here is you're there for the human rights and everyone, discrimination, whoever's being discriminated against, but the human rights to be addressed, to making sure those are there and talked about, and make sure that everyone is treated fairly, equally, and inclusive. Because again, who's going to do it if we're not going to do it? And a lot of people think that the NAACP is just for blacks or minorities. And it's not. Because again, if you notice, the marches that took place, it's peppered. It's mixed. And that's what this is. So for me, it was a place to be a black male, to be a stronger black male, and to understand that, this is what I can represent and who I can represent, and do it in a strong and passionate way, and understand that I've got that history behind me to be able to do that. And to do it and understand how to do that. So I needed to learn, I needed to grow, I needed to let go, and kind of understand that in order to benefit my community, I needed to become stronger, more knowledgeable, in order to do just that. And so I've been a member for the last, 9 years, I think.
Wow. Okay.
9 years, I believe.
That's a minute.
It is. It is a minute. And I wouldn't change it because I grow, I learn, I understand. And I understand that the community calls in and has certain concerning issues, dealing with racism, dealing with people mistreating them or doing something that, is some might consider inhumane in a sense. But touching on those aspects of it and just clarifying things, and then making sure that we provide those resources in order for them to have that addressed in the proper way, in the proper form. So, I wouldn't change it. And to this day, my mom back in Ohio and everything wasn't there. You didn't, unless you were in the big part of the city and everything else. That's where you really heard, but still it was a quiet little voice and everything because had to fall in line. But here, no, there's no falling in line. It's not. and we have the knowledge, the understanding, and the resources at hand to come out and handle and say, you know what, this ain't right. Whether it's at the school, whether it's at the workplace, we know how to address it, and we have that knowledge to address it in a proper setting, in a proper way, to ensure that it doesn't get pushed underneath the rug
Gotcha.
or anything like that.
So tell me this, right? You've done a myriad of things. You are doing a myriad of things. A gaggle, a cornucopia, a plethora, a plethora of different things. What is there anything else that you got going on that you want to share before we get into your run and why? Because there's a lot to go through, and again, I appreciate it because a lot of people they don't understand. They see us, we're doing the work. Uh, you get a little bit of side story, maybe you get an icebreaker in the middle, maybe you get some side conversation, but people don't understand the totality of what makes a person go to the meetings and serve on different boards without pay, right? The sacrifice. You're away for your family. You're trying to do something bigger and better. Sounds like you might have been scared to death. You were voluntold to join the board in the very beginning, right? Do I even have the right to have this voice? How do I have this voice?
Yeah.
But you're here, right? And so is there anything else that you want to share before we get into uh, what it is that you're doing? Shout out to Martita who just left. She had her show on a little bit ago. She says, my highest respect for Shannon. Thank you for all you've done in this community. We're so blessed having you in this amazing community.
Thank you, Martita. But we're also blessed to have you and what you're doing in this community, speaking up,
Right.
having that voice. Because I remember when you first went to Evergreen Park and spoke out about what was taking place against those who did not think that they belonged here. That population of those who were being, taken away and whatnot, because that's where I first spoke it publicly, in a sense,
Really?
and like out in public and everything, and representing Representative Appleton at the time, because she was there in full support of those being deported and everything. So given that opportunity, so she helped me.
I'll say, thinking about you, talking about your first time that you spoke out, Cheryl Nunez, she is Dr. Nunez, right?
She is. She is.
She was the VP for Equity and Inclusion at Olympic College.
Yes.
And she came to one of my classes to speak to my students. And what the students were talking about was, again, the fear of speaking up. Do I deserve to speak up? I don't have the right language and the words. And she said, don't worry about using, 10-gallon words. Just say what you feel. People will understand it. I thought that was really powerful from someone coming from her stature to empower those to just use your voice. You don't have to be perfect. You might stutter. There might be some ums in there. Just say what's on your heart. Say what's real to you. And that's what's important.
Yeah, that's where you get your strength from. Cheryl Nunez was awesome. I went to her office and seeked her knowledge on a lot of things while I was student body president there. And we kind of like made a pact that we were going to bring the awareness, but we were side by side and bring this in. And then, the big elephant in the room that nobody wanted to talk about with racism and what was going on and the hate at the time. But she broke that ceiling. I mean, she gave me a strong foundation to stand on and to speak out. So,
got a lot done in her short tenure.
She did. She did.
There were some power hitters there. You had Dr. Nunez, you had Dr. Bell. There were some folks all at the same time.
Yes.
You had Dr. Jones, right? You had some powerhouses all that came together.
Yeah.
You had Teresa McDermott. I mean, just on and on. I'm gonna leave some names out, so please forgive me. But that was the golden era of power, especially a Black voice and advocacy for everyone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Dr. Bolton. Been in her her office, seek her advice, and look at where she's at today and what she's doing. So, and it's interesting because uh, strong black women, strong black women, um, that helped do what they did and to be seen and heard. So, you know, as I like to say, those were your black mama bears.
Black Mama Bears. All right.
That's-
And if I can hit the horn, I'll hit the horn for the Black Mama Bears. So anything else you want to share before we get into this campaign?
I think that's it. You know,
We haven't exhausted it because I'm sure you will come up with some more things,
I'm
but
sure I will.
there's some other things in there for sure. But you are running for the 23rd legislative representative coming this fall, this November.
Yeah,
What it is?
yeah.
Okay.
As of now, all the way up. Primary is in August, and November will be the general. So it's time to get out and let people know who I am, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and why I think I'm the best candidate to do this.
Well, good. Let's start here. Let me pepper you with some questions. So first, why? Why are you doing this?
For me, a lot of people have always asked, Shannon, why don't you think about running? Why don't you think about running? And it was never the time because my family was going through what it was going through. We almost lost our daughter last year and everything. And then, you know, coming out of that, and then at the time, during the selection process, my mom wasn't doing well, ended up in the hospital. And then my daughter was just coming out of what she was going through because of the fact that, you know, she had cerebral palsy. So, you know, the brain injury that she had, what was going on and everything else, the timing, it just wasn't there and everything. But I did what I could to support those who were going through that selection process and everything. But this time, it was God took away my numb. And that's what I tell people. God took away my numb. My family is good. My wife and I sat down and had a long discussion and everything. And she's like, I don't know why you didn't do this before, because I said it was family. I wanted to make sure I was there for my family more than anything else. So my family was in a good place. My daughter was in a good place. My mom was in a good place. And for me, I was in a good place. I felt like I had the energy to devote and the time to devote, and because community. Um, I have been in this community for over 12 years, 15 years. I have been in this community, and I know this community, but I also know Hallsboro. I also know Bainbridge Island. I also know, Hansville. I also know Kingston. Um, so I know, and I've done everything I can to speak and help everybody get to where they need to be. Um, but this is me. This is my time. This is me coming out for my community, my family, to say I think, I know. There's no I think. I know. I know the barriers that my community faces.
Mhm.
I know the struggles that we've been through. I've spent the night at Sally's and understanding, what is taking place down there and how that's taking place. I have the relationships with the authorities, Chief Wolf, um, talking with him and having that and understanding. And then also the officers that we have here in Bremerton. But also understanding what's taking place out there in Paulsboro and how that is, and having that relationship with Chief Harding as well, and getting to know. And the mayors, Mayor Wheeler was the best man at my wedding.
Wow. Okay.
But I also learned from him because we sat on KCR's board of directors together. So understanding and talking with him, and then Becky Erickson, talking with her and having that relationship. Mary Erickson out at Paulsville. And then you have Brenda Fauntleroy Johnson, the first Black mayor of Bainbridge Island, talking with her, seeing her and watching her and everything. And then, of course, you have Judge Flood and what she did and how she's doing things. And then you also now have Superior Court Judge Brown. It's time, it's my time. It's my time for me to truly stand up and stand out in front and say, this is what I can do for my community. And this is the true voice that I can bring from my community, because I'm not doing it by myself. I'm doing it for those in my community and everything. So that's the why. And I think that it's now time that I no longer stay in the background. Now is the time for me to stand out front and lead and be there, instead of being the leader from the back and supporting. So for me, when Danielle and I had the talk and we prayed about it, we sat down, we talked to our kids. Everyone was excited about it. And then, I talked to Representative Appleton at the time, retired Representative Appleton at the time. Her and I, that was like my second mom, because she mentored me, but she understood who I was and was always there to support me along the way and everything, and whatnot. And so when I talked to her and let her know that I was doing this, she was proud. She was very accepting. And she said, it ain't going to be easy. Anything that anybody wants when it comes to change, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's hard and it's a struggle. But you know what? I'm willing to do the time. I'm willing to put in the groundwork. I may not understand everything, but I got enough knowledge and understanding of how to figure it out and make it work. And then bringing those in across the table from one another to make it work. So yeah. And this is fun and exciting for me because I love this. I'm ready for this. And I've got great support. And I've got a community that supports me to do this. So we're going to do the best we can to get out there and, ruffle some toe feathers, shake some trees and see some leaves fall here and there. But we're going to do the best that we can do to get me an Olympian. And I just see me being down there.
I like it.
That's where I'm at.
I like it. Why don't you take a sip of your drink there?
Oh, thank you.
And I will let people know again, if you're just joining us tonight, we're interviewing Shannon Turner. We're getting into the meat now. Shannon is running for the 23rd Legislative Representative come this November.
Position 2.
And so we're getting to hear firsthand what is important to him. We've just gone over the why. Yes, Joe, we are going to take some questions. Yeah, you know what? Since we're here, we were going to jump into his 3 main things. And again, everyone, you can go and get the information from his website. I'll go ahead and pop that up. You want to tell people what the website is?
Yeah, Vote Shannon Turner.
But that keeps it simple, right?
Simple, easy, right there.
Vote Shannon Turner.
Facebook page is Elect Shannon Turner, right there.
Elect Shannon Turner.
That's what that is.
All right. So since Joe has kicked it off for us, you have 3 major platforms. We'll go out of order since she talked about, she brought up healthcare here. So I'm going to go ahead and let her ask the first question here. Can you say more about your vision for improving healthcare in the 26th or the 28th? Sorry about that.
The 23rd LD?
23rd.
Vision. Wow, that's a great question. We sit and we look, and it was really something that was really interesting, because when you look at it, when Harrison Hospital left our community, that hurt our community because you took away a vital part of where everybody could go, knew how to get to come and address the issues and concerns that we had. So when that happened, and you have CHI Franciscan out there now at St. Michael's, correct? Um, Now it's a matter of trying to figure out how to get there, um, how to get back, and everything. But when you're looking at the health disparities here, it's a matter of getting providers here, looking at a public hospital. It's a matter of sitting there talking about uh, what we can do to make sure that the community has public access to address their healthcare needs. OBGYN, to get them here, to address the maternal needs for those. And, you know, so for me, it's a matter of bringing everybody to the table. It's a matter of looking at your local government and looking at some of your healthcare industries, your MCOs and everything, and finding out what that need is and addressing that need in the forefront and everything else. Because, you have gender rights and everything that is there as well. And especially now because our kids are really, really the ones who also need that support and that protection. Um, so for me, it's a matter of getting everybody at the table and sitting down. There's already talk and discussion going on about a public hospital and how that may look and what it may take in order for them to be here. And I'm not going to sit and lie and say I don't support that because I do.
And when you say public hospital, are we talking about a secular hospital or?
No, I mean, I will say it. I would have to sit down and figure that portion of it out, and what that may look like. Because again, um, you have another, I think, an emergency room that's opening up out there on Kitsap Way as well. But taking some of the pressure off of the emergency room and everything. But it's not addressing the main issues that we have. Because again, you're looking at, where's everybody going to go to address those healthcare needs, and everything that's being discussed, and that's taking place. So, and again, that's where I would sit down and talk with the professionals, and get more information and gather more information and come to the best decision that we can to make that happen here within the community. So.
So I'll share one thing that I think is important that's been missing here on the peninsula, and I will combine some of my questions together. Healthcare was important to me as one of my platforms as I was running for city council, uh, but also mental health is really important.
It's huge.
And as far as I know, there's only one black male mental health counselor here in Bremerton, and that's not enough to serve the population. You were telling your story earlier about, um, you know, how that's important, right? That mental health aspect.
Mhm.
And for me, I don't feel comfortable with having conversations with people that I can't identify with, or they can't identify with me, right? Even if it's a black woman or a person of color. Maybe we've had some shared experiences, but there's just something different from a male perspective that I think is important. Also, don't see that aside from the PA that I was
Right.
speaking about, right? I
Very
don't
true.
see regular physicians that are black. I do see some, physicians of color that are sprinkled around, especially in specialist places.
Mhm.
But is there any avocation or drive to bring more of that in here to the peninsula?
There's always that, number one. And I understand exactly where you're coming from because you do feel better when you're sitting down and addressing and talking with somebody that you can identify with. It makes things a lot easier, a lot more relaxed, and the understanding to build and have that relationship. But that is something that is being addressed. I mean, you have so many professional industries that are looking for, you know, those minority PAs, providers, behavioral specialists, and everything to come here, um, to be here. But again, it's a matter of, okay, we got to have something in order to get them here.
Yeah.
We got to have something that will make them want to come here.
So you believe it's a field of dreams. You build it and they will come.
And you build it, they will come.
Mm.
There's but see, that's human nature,
Mhm.
because it's like sugar.
Mhm.
You get a little taste of it, then you want a little more of it and everything. So when you address those issues equally across the board, and you level out that playing field and you start building off of that, then the next thing you know, that word of mouth and everything else is going to go. And you've got more and more people coming in saying, okay, I've heard, and I've heard great things, and this is what's going on, and this is what they're doing to address the concern and the issues, to make it better. And I think when you think about a black male, going in and everything, it is hard because it's not it's not there, and you have to rely on someone else to fill that void and those shoes, so to speak. And there is concerns, until that relationship is really strong and going. You continue to struggle, with that, and so you know the industry across the board. I mean, even in enforcement, it's the same thing. Getting minority cops or black officers or anybody of that status, to be here
Mhm.
to help, and to understand. And it's just, again, we have to have something for them to want to be here. And luckily we've got a great force, um, police force here at Authority. But again, on that medical and behavioral side, you're right. I mean, you have Kitsap Mental Health as the only agency here, and they can only do what they can do. But
And
again,
unfortunately, it doesn't exist there.
no, unfortunately, it doesn't. But you can't blame them at a certain degree or fault, because again, we have to have something here from what them to come, I believe, and we're working towards that, and it is getting better. And I think that's something that we can definitely achieve. But we got to get everybody together in order to achieve it. We got to achieve it as a whole, because you can't achieve it as a fraction.
Well, that's true. We have another question here from Martitha. She says, do you have a plan on how to serve the Latino community? What will you do to reach out to our marginalized community? And what's your plan to eliminate barriers and to provide equity and eliminate racism at our local schools?
Um, Bringing everybody to the board, showing up, asking the hard questions, getting your local leaders involved, but most importantly, giving that community a platform to speak, and let them speak without interruption and understand where they're coming from. Um, and then do what you can do to provide the resources, but most importantly, do what you can do to elevate them and their concerns, that need to be addressed. I think when you sit and you look at that community, especially there in Paulsbo, and what they're going through and what they're facing, um, it's a matter of listening and understanding. Um, and again, it's a matter of respect, because you don't know what they've gone through. You don't know what their kids have faced in school, between the name calling, the bullying, you know, the scare tactics. I know. I went through that myself as a child, growing up.
Mhm.
And I'm telling you, it's scary. But the thing, you show up and you address it and you make it known and you tell them, I hear you, but most important, I believe you. I believe you. And let's take the steps that we need to do to either figure it out and move forward. But again, we all need to come to the table with understanding voices and an open mind, so that we can hear each side. But they need to be at the table. They need to have a voice at that table, because you can't do anything without that. And addressing racism in the school, showing up in solidarity, showing up and addressing and letting whoever that racism went against or what is being affected, saying that, listen, this is something that is taught because we're blank slate, and you're taught the things that you're taught in education. Because when you look at it now, you have more people wanting to be like us, wanting to walk alongside us, wanting to stand up and be proud and voice with us. So that right there says what it says. And these are kids. The kids want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to be understood. But again, they also want to be respected and making sure that, they are believed with what is going on and that they matter to the school. That's the key. So the school's got to show up and say, okay, yeah, we do hear you, we do acknowledge, and yes, you do matter. But we also have to understand, again, those policies that are in place, that have been in place, and trying to address them and get those changed. And that's the one thing that you can do at the state level and then at the national level as well, is look at how you can affect and address those policies and make that change. The smallest change can have the biggest ripple. But you've got to try and make that small change happen.
So what you're saying is that would be something that would be in your purview.
Oh, yeah.
Is to change that. Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
definitely.
Because a lot of people don't have a good idea, and maybe I should ask that question: is what does the representative for District 2 do? Like,
I mean, it's the same as a state representative. We oversee everything that we have within our district, and then from transportation to the schools to healthcare to local laws and everything, but affected statewide. So we add our voice from the district into the statewide voice.
got you.
So that it can be addressed and heard. So you have other representatives that are there doing the same thing. But it's a matter of, okay, this is what's really affecting and my district, which is the same thing that is affecting the 26th, which is the same thing that's affecting the 23rd. So you have three large districts all of a sudden now that are being affected by this. And then you look at making some type of law or putting a bill in place to address that. And that's what that is. And that's how that works. So you're taking something that you hear across your district, from Indianola, Hansville, Kingston, Bainbridge Island, Paulsbo, Silverdale, Manette, and everything on the west side of the ridge, and taking that and saying, okay, now who can I partner with, and have an effect that we can do something to address these things, and I think that's one of the strongest points there that you can do. So the job is important. The job is very tedious. And it never ends because you're listening and you're going to meetings and you're meeting community members across the board, regardless of who they are. And you're going to get those who don't like you, but they may have a valid point. And just because they may not like you, but that point is valid, you still have to say, you know what, that's a great way of looking at that. I never thought about that. Maybe if I take this and put this with this and kind of mesh it together, then I can address something that's going to address everything across the board. So
We don't hear that too often, so I appreciate that viewpoint. I talk about that almost every Wednesday ad nauseum, saying, you have to talk to the other side, to your opponents, to those that don't think like you, and see where the win-win is in it, right? Yeah, we know it's easy to see where we're divergent. Where do we agree?
Yeah.
Where can we build from there?
Yeah.
So the three main things that you have on your website is housing, homelessness, healthcare, education. You answered a couple questions about healthcare. Anything else you wanted to add in regards to healthcare? Why is healthcare important to you?
Well, healthcare is important because it affects everybody.
Mm.
Healthcare, there's not one person that it does not affect. And when you're homeless, your healthcare is affected in that manner. When I went through, well, when Danielle and my family went through what we went through last year with our daughter um, and everything, the mental drain, the physical drain, and everything. My health care was affected. Danielle's health care was affected. Um, but, the mental aspect of it all, because you don't have a chance to talk. You just go and you deal and you consecutively deal with it. But the health care that was in place for our daughter um, was really permanent because it saved her life. So the littlest thing from a bruise on a toe that could go out to become a tumor on the tip of a toe
Mm.
um, and whatnot is effective because if you're not well and healthy, you can't work. If you're not well and healthy, you can't teach.
Yeah.
If you're not well and healthy, it's hard for you to survive. And so with that aspect and that outlook of it all, it is a priority. It has to be a priority. And everybody's rights, you know, are affected by that. Um, especially when it comes to the women's rights. And as you see, those that may want to take some of those rights away, which affects her kids. I have 3 daughters. I have 3 daughters. And I want them to be able to get the best health care that's out there and make sure that they have their rights in place so that they can get the best health care out there. And that's perfect. And that goes across the community in that aspect. So black, white, green, blue, yellow, purple, it doesn't matter. If you ain't healthy, then you can't do what you need to do.
Oh, that's facts. Big facts there. And I appreciate that. Joe says, what are your thoughts about how to get folks to engage in the political process? A lot of people are just not enthusiastic about voting, maybe because they don't. Sorry about that, Joe. Trying to read the rest of this. Because they don't believe their vote matters.
Vote matters. I had that same thought process that my vote didn't matter, that my vote didn't mean anything. Um, my mom to this day doesn't vote. She's like, it doesn't matter. And she's old school and everything. So trying to get her, and I talk about it every year to get her, but it does matter. Um, you can't sit there and complain and say anything about something if you don't vote because that's your say about the process. That's your input on the process because your vote puts whoever you want to represent you in office. Your vote puts whoever you want to come out of that office as well. But you have to understand that you hold the power. That person that you put in office doesn't hold that power because that person in that office is a representation of you. So to get people enticed or looking at it in a way of it being how to look at a joy because you now have pride. I voted for that person. I know what that person was talking about, and I supported that person's platform, and I voted. I helped get that person there. That was me. That's what I did. That's what matters. Because if you don't vote, I can't sit there and say anything. Well, did you vote? No. Well, why not? Well, because it doesn't matter. Well, see, you say it doesn't matter, and that's why you don't vote.
And you get what you always got.
Then you got what you got.
Yeah.
So you can't really, you can't say nothing.
So stop me if you think I say something wrong here. That there is a lot of apathy and people thinking, hey, voting doesn't matter. What's the point? And so they look at it as, well, if I vote for the two choices, which it could be Biden or Trump, who knows? Um, those are two bad choices, right? So they're like, well, what's the point? And so what a lot of folks will say, well, down ballot voting is more important, which down ballot voting means local voting, right?
Mhm.
That actually change comes from the bottom up. We, the people, there's more of us down here, and we send the representatives up, right? So whether it's city council or mayor or governor or, senator, state senator, or representative, that's where the change comes.
Yeah.
Am I saying anything wrong there?
No, you're not. But see, you also got to look at it from up top as well,
Mm-hmm.
because what they're doing up there does send that ripple effect down, because you're looking at the parties, and so the parties communicate with each other on a national level and on a state level, and then on a local level or district level. So they're communicating and getting forth. So there's processes that are in play that say, oh, we want to make sure that this platform gets discussed on this level. We send delegates to these national conventions so that they represent us across the board in the state. So that's where we have our say. And that's where that matters, because if we're saying as a state in a whole, no, we're not doing this because of such and such, and it needs to change, then it gets addressed, and that change.
Well, and I guess that's my point is when we see the presidential election, we get the get out the vote, rock the vote, all of those things happen. But for representative, we're not going to get any of that, right? So there's not this level of importance, regardless of party, put on, hey, you really need to get out that local vote when you see it nationally for the presidential election. So is that something that could change with it? Could that address the apathy and
It
get
could.
people to vote?
Well, yeah, it could, because you look at what's taking place nationally and what's going on, and then you look at how that trickles down to you on a local level. And so when you look at it as that, then you address what you need to address on a local level, which starts with your local government, your city council, your mayors, and then it goes up to your state representatives and to your governor. And then it goes up to your national representatives and your national senators as well to address that. Because again, everyone talks to everybody. So when you think that it's not really mattering, it is. It really does. Because you get put in with a select group or a population that shows the demographics of who's voting and where they're voting at and how they're voting. And that means something, because that means that the message that's being sent is being reached, and being understood. And if not, then we need to do what we need to do to change that message and make sure that it reaches the people that it needs to reach. I tell everyone that sometimes maybe you don't look at what's taking place nationally, and you take a look at what you got going on locally and statewide, there, because that influence that you have here statewide and everything goes up to that national level and gets pushed out. And then that's where that turn is and to come into play, because I have to face that as well, because there's times where you're like, I don't want either one, but yet what lesser of the two evils will I get if I select this person over that person?
Okay. So I'm going to ask you another question. In the meantime, we've got another person in the chat asking a question here. And while I pose this question to you, I'm going to just ask you to cut that fan off for me. If you don't mind.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm cold. But here's my question, or really my statement. I just want to get your feedback on there. I do a new podcast called The Echo Chamber, and in that, the first episode was about the fact that people who don't register to vote are not pulled for jury duty. And so if you're not willing to serve on jury duty, then you're going to get the disparate sentencing and the bias sentencing because we're not represented. So you're not going to see black males, or you see all white juries and we say, hey, it's not a jury of our peers. Well, it's not going to be a jury of our peers if one, you're not registered to vote. So even if you're not voting, right, because you don't like either choice, and hopefully you'll vote for somebody and empower yourself through that vote. Another way to make change, and the great trick that I see, is to get you to not even register, because now you will never be in that jury pool. Uh, Even though they still might do some tricks and try to get you off the jury pool or whatever, but if you're not even there to be called, then that's when you see these sentences. And are people still locked up for marijuana, or during the crack era, where crack was sentenced at higher rates than cocaine, right?
Yeah.
If that's going to change, then you have to be on the jury, right? And you have to see the importance of that. Any thoughts on that? I'm assuming because you're in politics, you knew that, but no one talks about that piece of it. Your thoughts?
No, I mean that's true. That is true. And I understand exactly what you're saying and where you're coming from, because I got selected for jury duty, and I showed up, and when I showed up, I was at one black dot in a sea of white
Mm.
and everything. And then,
And how many did they call? When you say a C, how many was there?
I want to say 20, 30 at that point in time.
Because they have to whittle it down, right?
Yeah.
So you're the only black person in the jury pool, and then it gets whittled down.
And then it gets
what are your odds?
It is exactly that. And I never got selected.
Is that something we can change? Is that something that's in your power also? Because that really affects low income people at a very harsh level, right? Because if you do jury duty, I think you might end up getting like $10 a day or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And a trial can drag on, right? So it's like, hey, I want to serve, but I'm not on salary. I need every dollar. I'm going to work sick because I can't afford to miss. So is that something that can be changed so that there's an equity piece to serving on jury duty?
That's a good question.
Can you do that as a representative?
That's a good question, and I'm sure that's something that can be looked into and addressed and talked about.
All right, we could go with peanut oil tonight.
We could. We definitely could. And I think that was something that's been discussed at one point in time, because of the fact that I can't miss work because you're taking 2 weeks of my pay and whatnot. But if I'm not mistaken, there may be a certain RCW or a WAC that says that there's something to offset, a subsidy or something that could be placed. But that might be something that has to be addressed by the courts themselves and everything. But that's something to definitely look into.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
That's a really good question.
All right, we're here with Shannon Turner. We're having a conversation as he's already announced his candidacy. He's here talking to us. Type your questions in the chat. They're coming in. So we're going to go ahead to our next question here. Martita says, will you support health care for undocumented? Are you stand in solidarity and accompany us to the Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Day, which will be on February 7th in Olympia. We will have buses to pick you up, bring you to Olympia, and then bring you back at 6 p.m. the same day. Register for your spot, and there's a URL there before January 12th, and then she also puts it in Spanish there. So that's a question to you. Do you support healthcare for undocumented?
Yes, that's a simple question to answer. I do, because they've done so much. And just because they're undocumented doesn't mean that they don't deserve the same access points that we do. Because I think that in some way, they're looking at going through that process to become a citizen. But for whatever reason, they deserve to have health care. They don't deserve. No human should go without health care. There's no reason for that.
I say we're the richest nation in the history of mankind. How could folks be homeless, hungry, and not have health care?
Exactly. I mean, think about it. When you over in Germany, when I was stationed over there, and I learned how that system was set up and how that system worked, and how the government took care of the medical needs of, well, their citizens, and everything, that they paid for everything across the board.
Mm.
It was amazing because healthcare came first. You went in, you got taken care of, you were made to stay, as fit as you could possibly be. And that way you could contribute to what was going on with society. Um, and it gave you a lot of pride and strength because you were strong and you didn't have, there was no stress when it came to healthcare. You didn't have to worry about, oh my God, I got to pay a deductible. I can't go to the doctor because I can't afford to pay the deductible
Or the prescriptions.
or the prescription.
Man.
Looking at that and prices and, people even, a sliding scale sometimes doesn't necessarily help because people in certain situations just don't have it.
Oh, man.
And then you could be looking at life-saving drugs that they need in order to survive. Insulin, when it made that remarkable jump from this amount to to the 3-digit mark, I would say, people were looking as how am I going to afford this, and how am I going to survive without this, because of just that. So, again, everyone deserves to have health care. That's what I believe. That's where I stand. Martita, I would love to come with you, but I don't think I can. But I'm there in solidarity. There's no questions asked about that.
Nice. So your three things are healthcare, housing, homelessness, education. Did we kind of cover healthcare?
We did
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to homelessness, and then we'll save education for the end. We
Okay.
talked quite a bit about homelessness,
We did.
especially with your own experience,
Yeah.
The experience of fellow students, your advocacy work in that. Um, so we've got the whys. What do you want to do? What are you going to do different? What are you going to bring to the state that either hasn't been done or are you hoping to get done and bolster?
And that is really a really good question because you sit and you look. You need to bring that industry to the table, and sit down and have that conversation and address the concerns and everything. Because I can't sit here and say that everything has been tried. The discussions, I would say, have been had, but what discussions have not been had is making sure you got the right people at the right table addressing the right things that are dealing with everybody in the community, the white, the black, the Latinos, LGBTQ, everyone has to have a seat at the table because everybody's affected differently and they have different barriers as well. So, and I think, that's the one thing is I bring that different perspective from a black male standpoint, um, where I can sit there and say, you know what, I there was no counselor, that I could get to because I had to sit and wait 3 months to be seen.
Yeah.
Literally. And then I had to be evaluated. And you're looking at a full day and hours upon hours just for them to get a background to be seen. So I think, sitting there looking at the processes and the time frame and then making sure everyone's got equal access in order to get that, you know, put something in place to go and pick them up. Or, now we have telehealth, making that Zoom appointment, making it easier for them to get it. Because again, now you have that older age bracket, the baby boomers, who are now transitioning out, and you see that gap.
Mhm.
You see that gap, and everything. So not everybody is necessarily, computer literate and is used to the old way. So do what we can to provide. It was interesting because you had those doctors that made house calls that would come to you and meet you where you were at
Wow.
and what took place.
That's a true story.
I mean, that's what telehealth kind of does in a sense.
Mhm.
But again, if that person is dire and you know that situation and what's going on, why can't 2 or 3 people in a group go? We send nurses there. We set up, an area in the house for treatment and everything. So why can't we? So I think what I'd like to do is just bunker down, get everybody at the table, figure out what's working, what's not working. But most importantly, go out to my community and say, talk to me. Let me know what is working and what's not working. I know we need to get more behavioral specialists in here, but do we also need to have another place, another building in order to make this adequate, make this work? Kitsap Health now has a Pendleton place, which is great. And that's just the one.
Yeah, we need like 3 or 4.
We need those mental health buildings. We need those spaces in order to address what we really got going on. And again, and I think maybe building this, they will come because we're taking that step and everything.
Well, so in regard to housing, and I'm probably going to ask you all these questions, but you just answered number 2, which was how will you collaborate with local organizations, right? You did that. What strategies will you implement to address the root causes of homelessness here on the peninsula? Because we've got unique issues here.
We do. We definitely do. And I think it's going back and sitting down with your local organizations and saying, what are you facing? And then it's getting out and walking and talking with these individuals to sit here and see where they're at, meeting them where they're at, not being afraid to shake somebody's hand and say, I'm sorry, but where are you at right now? Are you getting any resources? Are you getting your needs addressed in a certain way that, you're not being able to get to in order to help make your situation better? I don't know if I said that the right way. But and then it's sitting down, talking with your local leaders, talking with the organizations, whoever's got boots on the ground and is sitting inside that organization or sitting inside there. And again, what about those who are coming in to help feed, to help clothe, to help, who are down here every weekend, passing out toothbrushes or giving them a hamburger and some chips or some water or providing them with some clothes and whatnot. And then sitting down with your local authorities because they're the ones that got to come in and deal with what's taking place and going on with these new ordinances and everything else that are being passed.
Well, let me ask you a 2-part question, right? You know what was going on this summer, right? With the tents and the ordinance that kicked in November 1 and the displacement and everything else. And of course, it creates a very divided community, right?
It is.
Where on the one hand, people can be very empathetic and say, hey, yeah, no one should be homeless and no one should be out in the street. But at the same time, it's not safe for me and my kids. I don't want this in my neighborhood. It affects property values. I need to be safe, right? So these are the things that we hear. There's a conversation of building up on Kitsap Way. And, Bay Vista residents are upset. We just had city council on Wednesday. And to what you were saying, right? The boots on the ground, individuals and groups, and my organization is one, have been on the ground. And so it's been tough to have conversations, even when you're working hand in hand with city council and the mayor and the police and other organizations to figure it out. And a lot of it is centered around pay. So my question is 2 parts. Do you support the development of affordable housing options specifically designed for the homeless population? And two, how will you balance the need to address homelessness while ensuring the safety and well-being of the surrounding community?
And that's a real good question, and that's the hardest question. Do I support it? Yeah, like I said, I do support it. In a
That's
sense,
Pendleton Place, right?
Pendleton Place.
Basically.
Yeah,
Okay.
Pendleton Place.
So things like that you support.
Things like that I support,
Okay.
because when given the opportunity to have something like that, then they have a place that they can go to and look forward, to self-sustaining or getting to that point to become self-sustaining and using those resources available. So yes, that I definitely do support, because it's valuable. And the unfortunate thing is that we don't have enough of that. PCHS is doing a medical respite center to help alleviate some of the stress and everything, by providing that respite center there, to work between the
ETA on
community
that?
and everything. We're looking at 2024.
Okay.
As of
This year?
right now. Yeah, I believe so.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
I do. Don't quote me. Don't quote me.
You heard it here first.
Timelines do change. But I
Do you have
believe
permits
so.
in place? Do you know?
Yeah, I do believe things are definitely in place. Mayor Wheeler was talking about it this past Thursday,
Okay.
or yesterday rather, and everything at a chamber luncheon. And you're looking at something that the community would really, really prosper from, because of the fact that you're looking at a 22-room building that is there, that is local, that's right next to Salvation Army, and it's right up from our 6th Street clinic and everything. But it addresses the need that's there, and then you're looking at us working alongside St. Michael, so that when something happens and they need a transport from the hospital to the respite center, they've got somewhere to go,
yeah,
instead of being taken and put back out on the street. So with that aspect of it and everything, but I mean, that's one of the things that's dire to the community and is needed. And what was the second part of that question?
The second part is, and I just want to, say to folks before I answer this or ask this of you again, permitting is one of the things that slows everything down.
It does.
So there's a lot of things in the works throughout the county that are just waiting on permits, and so it's pushing things out longer and longer. So it's not necessarily the agencies that are trying to do the work. So just understanding that, a lot of people in the community don't get it, and it's like, hey, what's taking so long? Why isn't this happening? Right? You said you were going to do this, and it's coming.
It is
because
coming.
sometimes it's hung up in permits. Sometimes it could be other reasons, but permits is out of your hands.
It is. It's out of our hands. That's the nature of the beast sometimes. But I can also say that the city and the county are trying to do their best to address that and push things through, because of the fact that they make it a priority and everything. But that's where we're at.
So the second part of the question was, how will you balance the need to address homelessness while ensuring the safety and well-being of others in the community?
I think balancing that is, talking with your authorities, talking with your organizations that are there, coming through, and then just walking through the area, seeing what you see, and talking to people and addressing that portion of it. That is a big thing, because again, we want to do what's right and the best thing we can do for those who are homeless, but we also need to keep our children safe. We need to keep us safe, and keep the environment safe, in order to do as such. And I think by staying in touch and staying in tune as to what's taking place and what's going on, will help, shape that.
Well, what I'll say is, at City Council, there were a lot of residents of Bay Vista that spoke just to this question here. And with the rescue mission being on Kitsap Way, they are seeing an uptick of, folks crossing that busy street,
Yeah.
almost causing accidents, inside panhandling,
Mhm.
and so there's unsafe behaviors that are happening. They're trying to raise their children there. And they too themselves want to feel safe.
Of course.
And they're telling the police, they're telling the mayor, they're telling their city council, and it's getting worse, it's not getting better. And so that's the safety piece that I think is missing, and that's where the empathy is. Again, I empathize, but it, the impact,
Yeah.
the places, the things that are supposed to be in place to protect us are not there, and so you're trying to solve this issue without addressing that. And so they're going to want to know from the elected, if I vote for you, how are you going to address
Well,
that?
I'm going
What's
to
going to be
bring
different?
that point up. Let's figure out what we need to do in order to that, whether it's possibly bringing an outer agency in to
And
help.
that's what is been voted on Wednesday.
Yeah, to bring some an outside set of eyes in to
Mm,
take a look at what's going on and how that can be addressed. And again, going back and look at the process that are in place. Some things do we need to tighten up? Some things do we need to make more stringent when it comes to the processes of what's in place in now? Because our BPD is doing the best that they can possibly do, given the fact that they have what they have in place. Um, but then you also have to look at what they have to do and the areas they have to cover, and as such. And so they have to sit here and at certain times decide, hey, do I need to be more stringent right now in order to do this? And then, what might be the ramification if somebody sees that and says,
Mhm.
oh, you know, so, you got to look at it with an open lens. And that's why they, have, the behavioral health specialists that ride along with them.
The navigators.
The navigators, yes, thank you. The navigators are right along with them. And that's building that relationship with those people there who know them, so to speak. But again, bringing somebody else in and saying, hey, look, this is what we're dealing with. What do I need to do in order uh, to make this safer, to make this environment safer? How can I support you guys to help us and to support us to make this happen? And then bring your community in. Let them see what you're doing and what you're trying to do. And this is the part where you're being transparent. Because, having them there is saying, okay, you know what? We're inviting you in. We're going to let you see what we're trying to do and let you be a part of it. Have a say in this, because you can get your questions answered and you can take it back and let your community know what's going on and everything.
So is it fair to say that you're going to be a pretty accessible representative? There's been some concerns that some of our local politicians are not accessible to all. They're accessible to some. It depends on how you are labeled.
Yeah.
Are you labeled? Are you considered by the powers that be a leader or an organization? And so you have folks that may have organized groups, grassroots efforts, and some folks are not willing to have conversations with those entities. So is that something that, it's like, hey, if you're not KCR, Birmingham Housing Authority, maybe check in with them or send your email in. But, no, I don't want to, I'm not going to,
That's
it's not
not
good
me.
for me. Okay.
That's not me. Even if I try to be, um, I get in trouble because I talk to everybody, because I want to know. Because if I can do something to help, then that's what I want to try and do. I mean, I can't be everywhere at all times.
Right.
Um, I'm not saying that, but I will try to be accessible as I possibly can. I'm not going to shun away from who I am and what I'm doing and what got me where I'm at today, because this is my community. In order for this to continue to be my community, I need to be in my community, which means I need to be talking with people
Mhm.
on that level and that aspect of it. I might not have all the answers right there and then, and it may take me some time get certain answers. But accessibility, you know, I don't turn anybody away. If you're going to yell at me, then okay, yell at me. Because then there's a reason why. And I need to understand why you're yelling at me. Because if I could do something to change that, then now we can have a conversation. And then we can get to the root of the matter and find out what we can do to solve it.
Mm.
So, but no.
Well, let me ask you one final question under homelessness and housing as we go into education. I'm gonna give you a story. I won't reveal the name, but it's someone we mutually know, and came up with a great idea which I hadn't heard. Right,
Sure.
and when Harrison closed, right, tragedy, they had to close for whatever reasons it did. Folks were like, "Hey, why not just move the shelter over there to Harrison?" Right, and there were some issues with why. Like there's asbestos inside, and then it's sat empty for so long, and now it's not safe. But this individual, and I don't want to take credit for this, so if you're listening, you're watching, I'll give the credit to you. I said, why not use the parking lots, right? And then or the parking garage, right? Because those aren't inside the building, and you're making an outdoor shelter. Uh, that is, you've got that space. It's not really in the residential. Um, do you have any ideas? Having that lived experience of being homeless, working with folks that have been homeless and advocating for them that you want to take to Olympia as soon as you're in and able to push through some of your own bills. Do you have any solutions that are kind of at the ready that you've been milling around?
Um, Solutions, possible ideas, maybe.
Okay.
Because again, what you think is a solution for one might not be the same solution for the next or the other person. But I think it's a matter of keeping an open mind and an open concept. The parking lots, the military tents and everything of setting those up like they did for COVID
Hmm.
and whatnot. Um,
We can do it.
we can do it.
We have done it.
And we have done that. And it's just a matter of, looking at it in a different light, in a different sense to figure out what can we do to accompany that and make it homey, make it, a livable space for all. And then what can we do to come off of that? Because I'm telling you, as a soldier being over in the desert, and you're visiting one of those hospital tents and everything, thinking that, oh, it ain't gonna work. It's one of the best things out there when you have nothing, because it does what it's supposed to do. It provides shelter, it keeps heat in, it keeps the cold out, but it also allows you to live as a human being and be present and be there. So,
Well, and I take it to triage and do some pretty major trauma care, right?
it does.
In field.
Yeah, and the fact that it's sterilized. You
Mhm.
can sterilize it. I mean, you could do what you need to do because that's what it's set up to do. It's set up to be ready to combat the elements and anything else that's going on. So when you sit there and you say the parking garage, I'm not saying that that's a bad idea, but if you look at that concept of that, then you look at the vent system in there. You look at the structure of how are you going to use that, and is an environment ready? You know, um, what are the safety concerns within that concept of that structure itself? So looking at it in the aspect of all that.
Yeah, but how long would it take for someone to do a structural plan or take samples of carbon monoxide levels? I
It's a
mean, it
process.
is open air.
Well, yeah, but it is, again.
But we've been dealing with
is,
this issue for a
again,
while.
It's what's in that concrete and then what's in that structure itself that you've got to worry about containing. I mean, when you look at it, you can put a military tent up in a matter of minutes, an hour, maybe two,
But then
depending
you
on
would
the
just
cost
use the
structure.
parking lot. Don't do the garage. Don't
Right,
put it underneath.
exactly.
Just put it on the parking lot.
Exactly. You can do that.
Mhm.
And then again, you can also build off of that and continue. And then looking at, you know, the tiny homes as well, that construct, the placement of those and where that's at, and then how that gets set up. So you have the pros and the cons of both aspects of everything else. It's just a matter of getting everyone together and looking at it and then coming up with a reasonable solution to possibly encompass both. You know, as you say, find that common ground to where we can do this and this to benefit those. Because if you can, and you know this, is not everybody's going to want to come inside.
That's true.
Not everyone is. But, given that opportunity, you might be surprised at how many you do get inside. And those who do want to stay out for their own reasons. Then you have to respect that and then just be there for them.
Would it be, or I guess I'll ask you this, as you're speaking into existence, once you have won and you are doing that work and your boots on the ground and you're listening and you're creating those listening circles, I'm asking for you to have people who are in the street at the table. Because a lot of times what we do is we do what we think is best for the individual, but that individual is never present to say, this is what the experience is. This is why I'm experiencing this. I can't come in because um, I have a behavioral issue because of the drug use or the alcohol use. So what can we do about that? I may be using it because of the weather conditions, right? And this is my way to just numb the frigid
The nerves.
temperatures or the
Numb the
burning
nerves,
hot. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I can't. I got to get out of my mind, right? But now I have an opportunity to go in. But when I go in, I'm agitated because I'm coming down and I get 86. So what can be done uh, where their voices are also heard, where we can find that solution? Because they're very resilient and industrious in the ways that they survive in those elements.
Bring them to the table.
All right.
I mean, that's it. You can't do anything for me because you ain't me.
Mhm.
But yet, if you have this lived experience and you see what's going on, and if I'm not bringing you to the table and I go out and change everything, and I'm doing more harm than I am good. I don't want to hurt my community. And how can I sit there and represent my community if I'm not bringing my community to the table? Because they're the ones that are there. Because this is what I'm supposed to do. It's important, and I see that today. Is that again? They say, "Oh, well, I talked to such and such, and they said that they they said what? Give me a name. Give me a person. Who can I talk to that's lived this and been here or is here? Take me, show me, because I need to see. I need to understand." Um, and that's the important thing about it, because again, why am I going to create a bill or help a law get passed when I'm going to put another barrier in front of somebody else? I need to know who was at the table. Who did you talk to that said that this is going to work for this? Because I'm sorry, I didn't see anybody there,
Mhm.
So I can't speak. I need to, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring them up to Olympia and say, I need you to testify. Tell me why. Give me the reason why you're supporting this bill that we're putting in place to take place to help. Tell me why these guys are wrong, because this is the barrier that they're addressing, that they're putting in place if this does happen, if it does pass for them. Let us know. I mean, that's the whole thing about it. That's the whole thing about coming up there and saying and giving the reasons why and helping them understand. Because again, you're speaking to a committee, and that committee is there to help understand that if this bill does get passed, then it's affecting all, not just a portion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. So, you know, I want to empower people to use their voice. I want to empower people to be strong and come up and say, regardless of where you're at and who you are, your voice matters. You matter. And that's the thing. And that's strength of community. That's community. That's true community representation. And what's going on. So, you know.
Well, and I would just say, I think that would require us to do something different. We have these hard lines of, send it in an email, or you've got, 3 minutes to speak. And the folks that need to express their lived experience may not be of sober mind when they're doing it, and may need more time to articulate their point. And it's going to be hard to understand it coming from them, but it's important that it comes from them because the truth is in there. If you have the patience and the temerity to listen through and sift through it, right? Instead of saying, hey, when you're sober and you're good, come and talk, and then I can hear what you're saying. It's like, well, but they're in the elements, is it come as I am? This is how I am right now, right? And it's tough, it's rough. I'm surviving. I'm hanging on, and you might get moments of lucidity.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you, bear that and be patient and give the grace to say, okay, I'm going to sit with this and listen and pull out what I need from it.
Can I? Yeah.
I guess the question is will you? We know you can.
That's the most important thing. Will I? Yeah, I will. But see, and then also, then when they come up to the committee, you do have 3 minutes. And that's just being respectful to everybody else. But the one thing I tell people too is write it down. Mm-hmm. Let someone write it down. I'll read it. These are his words. This is him speaking through me. And I want everyone to listen and understand, because that 3 minutes is a long time. And you can feel certain words.
It's a long time when you're prepared. It's a short time when you go up there and you ain't thought about what you want to say.
True.
It's like, man, your time is up.
Yeah, you're like, nope, sorry, you missed out.
If you didn't think about what you wanted to say, that time goes quick.
It does.
Boy, but you're right. 90 seconds is an eternity. You can get through a lot if you're prepared.
Yeah, you can. And again, words have meaning and effect.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that a lot of people forget about is
that's hilarious.
Just that.
Martita says, thank you, Shannon Turner. And Joe says, I'm going to count on you to make it your business to bring these folks to testify in Olympia when their voices are needed. It is not easy for down and it folks to advocate for themselves. No. They need a champion. And that's just what I was talking about. Absolutely agree with that, Joe.
And that is true, Joe. And I would be more than happy, again, to stand up and represent that, because that's true. Because they're walking in, and they may not get the time of day. But again, they still need to be recognized. They still need to be heard. And that's one of the most important things.
So we're here with Shannon Turner, running for representative here, 23rd?
23rd LD.
Position 2.
Position 2.
We've gone through 2 of his 3 main platforms, and we'll have some other questions. So we talked about healthcare. We talked about homelessness. Now, and both of these are near and dear to my heart, but you actually have 3 of the 4 that I was campaigning on. So they're all dear to my heart.
They're all. Yeah.
Education is definitely a big one for me. So please talk about education, why it's important. And again, before you answer, please like, subscribe, and share. These conversations don't get pushed out onto YouTube and the algorithm. And so only through you thumbs upping it and sharing it will that happen. And again, the purpose is, you've got League of Women Voters, you've got BCAT, you have other agencies that interview candidates and things of that nature. But we don't have spaces for candidates to come to hear from us right? And so you have to log in. And the League of Women Voters is fantastic. Great people. BCAT is awesome. I know many of them, and they do really good work. And without them, it would be a void, a black hole of information in regards to what's going on here politically in the community. But we do need to spread that out, right? So more of us can participate in democracy. It really is we the people. And so somebody has to do this, and this is that attempt to do that. So please share it out. So very important. Let's go ahead and get back to it. Education, sir. Touch on education. Why education?
Why education? Um, because growing up, I didn't like education.
Uh-oh.
Didn't like it. It was hard for me to understand why
Okay.
and everything. But as I got older, I understood that education was the key. And that, again, that knowledge is power in the aspect of it all. But I say education because we have our kids um, who need to understand that you need to be educated in order to make it. You need to have that strong educational background or that hands-on knowledge of understanding what you're working with and how you're working with it and what you can use that for to go forward to get you propelled to that next level. I've sit there and I've watched too many barriers be placed because of financial issues, the medical issues, living circumstances that we place upon families in order to say, look, you're either going to learn or you need to go to work in order to survive.
Mm.
Instead of meeting them and saying, you know what, let us take care of you on the survive part so that you can go to school and learn to help better our systems to address things, and the school pipeline to jail, from the school to the prison, how that affects, you know, our black kids and our minority students. Um, that's why it's important because we need to understand that our history is being taken away. It's not being taught. And what was then is not now. Um, it's being whitewashed.
Mm.
Um, and this is one way to just say that, we're here, our history, man. We are a part of America. We are American history. Um, and that my ancestors did what they did to make America great and to have the opportunities that we have. Um, even though you did what you did, now it's our turn to be the betterment of it all, to address those barriers, to address the system that's in place, to address the fact that, we need minority teachers to come in and to teach, to address and say, you know what, I got your history right here. Let's learn, let's educate and go out and then populate and then go forth from there. Um, so that's why education is important, you know, and those who have disabilities. See, we ain't touched about those who have the disabilities portion of it, how we're not addressing that and how we lack in that area so much. Um, it's like, well, geez, they don't matter. And they do matter more than anything else, you know. And it's funny because we never think about IEPs or special disabilities unless it's something that happens to make us think about it. But that's something that should be out in the forefront. Just because I've got someone who's perfect over here and they're doing what they're doing doesn't mean that these guys don't deserve the same.
Mm.
They have the same rights.
Mm-hmm.
They have the same abilities and access points of somebody who's normal. Just because they have to do it in a different way doesn't make them less or anything as such. So, education, our young adults, we have taken away the childhood of of our kids because now we want them to graduate with AAs before they leave high school.
Mm.
We want them to have, things set in place to go and get that bachelor's, to go forth and go on.
So wait, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing that kids are leaving with their 2-year degree
I'm not
and their diploma?
I'm not saying that it's a bad thing
Mhm.
at all, but I'm saying that it's something that we push.
Mm.
I mean, we all want our kids to be successful.
Yes.
We all want them to succeed and have a better life than what we have, and everything. But I also want my kids to understand what it's like to be a child,
Mm.
to go out and enjoy life as a child.
I just was having this conversation on the phone earlier.
And
with you before.
yeah,
Yeah.
Um,
Just talking to you.
and embrace that childhood to go out and have fun, and learn, do the sports, and understand that your education is going to be there, and I can assist you with that. And there we got things in place and grants out there to help you get there. But I don't want to take that innocence away from them, because then all they do is put so much pressure on themselves that it's like, oh geez, I either make it or I don't, which leads to mental strain, which leads in some cases a breakdown, which you end up getting that PTSD from, because now you got to talk to a counselor, which could lead to suicide because of the pressure and everything else and the strain. So, but we have to look at it as a whole. So it's a fine balance. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but what I'm saying is I think that it's a choice that our kids should make, because they're in high school to learn and everything. They know whether or not they want to go forth to college. They know whether or not they're going to get that scholarship to go to a school to play sports or whatnot. And they know from the point of them getting into that 10th grade level, that sophomore year, on what that grade looks like. So you know whether you're going to maintain a certain GPA and go forth. But I've seen it where the pressure on some of these kids to go forth and to go to school, like they have to go to school, because their life depends on them going to school. I've seen that pressure, and I've seen kids snap and do the wrong things, and everything. And again, you address these barriers because the situation's at home. They've got to contend with that. And so again, to me, it goes back to that foundation, because I want to do what I can to have the parents involved. Because if my parents are engaged and involved, then I can understand what that home situation looks like. I can understand what is needed for that child to become successful, and where that child's direction and path is going, in that aspect of it. So I look at it from all aspects, and I keep an open mind of all aspects,
Mm-hmm.
and everything. My daughter is doing Running Start, and I'm proud of her for doing that. And that's something that she chose to do. And she chose to do that because of the fact that she's seen what I did and her mom did at OC, because we were both student body presidents, and the community and what that encompassed and everything. So, but I also see the stress that she wears on trying to do the college thing and yet maintain the high school and go through those classes and everything, and to be there and whatnot. So it's a fine line. So understanding, just how important the education is, um, and what we can do with it if it's done the right way, it's huge. And then addressing, like I said, the system, because a black male is stereotyped because of the fact the only way you're going to get out of this area is if you're playing sports, or if you're doing something in sports in that arena, because that's how you're viewed. And if you ain't doing that, then what are you doing out on the streets? Who you running with? Are you selling? You know, so you get placed into that category, and that's wrong.
Right.
That's just wrong. I mean, so again, you go back and then you look at what's going on as a whole. So for me, it's always been education because it gives you a base, it gives you a foundation, it gives you a solid ground that they can't take away from you. No one can take away your graduation. No one can take away that diploma. No one can take away that you have that bachelor's or that master's or you get that doctorate. They can't take that away from you because that's what you earned, because that's what you wanted to do, and because you're successful at it.
And I hear that. Let me push back on you a little bit on that. I hear that, we tend to say, they can't take this from you, but they can keep you from using it. There's a lot of bachelor holders working at Starbucks.
No,
You know what I mean?
I didn't say they couldn't. I didn't say they could not. I didn't say that. I said they can't take it away. But yes,
they can't take it, but it ain't working
you know what? Yes, they can. I mean, and that's one of the things too, because I agree with you. Somebody has I remember, I can't remember where I was at, and somebody came up and they said, "Yeah, I got a master's." I said, and it might have been they were working at McDonald's as a manager. I said, "You got a master's and you're doing this?" I mean, and no disrespect was intended or anything. I was just shocked.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, because everywhere that I went and applied for, they said I was either too overqualified, too underqualified, or I'm sorry, we don't have space for you right now.
Mm-hmm.
So come back and see us in 3 months, and then we'll see where you're at." So you got no choice but to come back, and then it's like, well, you wasted all this thousands of dollars to get this,
Tens of thousands.
yeah, and you're right, you can't use it, and I heard that a lot, and it's sad, it's true though. And I don't understand that. And that's one of the things that really baffles me and it really frustrates me because, we're all sitting here looking, those who say we're looking for employment and everything. And we have these degrees. And yet.
That's not the employment that's available.
No,
it's part of it. And then as you age, right? Well, now you command more salary because of your previous experience, right?
Exactly.
So I'm going to go with the younger green person because I can pay them less, right? So that's one of the things.
Yeah.
And you keep getting older, like you said, overqualified, right? So you get pigeonholed in that. Now they're starting to do away with requiring degrees, right? Like KCR is doing that. We're more concerned with your lived experience and whatnot, and that's great. But for those that have earned the degree and got the student loan debt there,
you got to take care
to pay for it.
I'm right
It's
there
like,
with
so
you.
what am I supposed to do then, right? So
Right.
then it becomes this issue, and it's a huge trap. And what people should realize, and this is just a segue, I saw something in the news where Biden has done some loan forgiveness. But for that loan forgiveness is such a strict, narrow path, right? You have had to make payments, I believe, for 10 years, not missing any payments. And so there's only the people that were able to pay off their loans and never go into forbearance and deferment are going to be able to benefit from that, right? And so I was like, oh, hey, he did this great thing. It's not true for most folks that are suffering, right? Which is usually how it is. You talked about it all the time, right? You do something here, but there's this effect over here, and it's not actually helping these people.
Exactly.
Right? But now everyone is saying, maybe if I'm a one-issue voter or a few-issue voter, I'm like, well, that's why I'm voting because this was important to me, but then I don't even qualify for it, or my loved ones didn't qualify for it. So it's one of those things. But I wanted to ask you, I didn't print out the sheet for this, but you probably know about State Bill 5830 and House Bill 1270, which is establishing a Washington Commission for Boys and Men. If you haven't, what's really powerful about this, let me hand this to you so you can look at it. These are all Washington state statistics. Men dying by suicide, 78% of deaths by suicide under age 25 are men and boys. 77 of all deaths by suicide are men and boys. Overdosing, 71% of drug overdoses are boys. 72% of opiate overdoses are men. 66% of alcohol abuse deaths are men.
Wow.
Incarcerated, all Washington State, 94% of prison population in Washington State are men. 91% of youth juvenile rehabilitation, boys. 91% homelessness, 63% men homeless. 70% of the unsheltered, men, state of Washington. Uninsured healthcare, 65% of those uninsured are non-elderly adults, are men. Failing in schools, because we're talking about education, 60% of high school dropouts are men. 50% of our boys are not meeting ELA standards from grades 3 to 8. And then we're underrepresented in mental health counseling, only 25% male. We're underrepresented in elementary health, 18%, and 16% represented in social work. And so when you hear all that, I try to, as a new advocate, right, out and about, talking about it more, because I've always been an advocate. It's not a zero-sum game in my mind. We still can advocate for our girls and women, but our boys are being hurt. And when you look at, grades 3 through 8, and you're talking about Head Start and kids getting that solid footing early on, that those are huge issues. We also talk about the school to prison pipeline. This is how these things happen, right? I can't read. I'm illiterate. My math skills are bad. What am I doing in school? Do we need to, and I know I'm hitting you with a fire hose, do we need to revamp what school looks like? Because it's not, the cookie cutter mass assembly is not working anymore for a majority, right? We're talking about majorities here.
Right.
So what do? My fear is with AI, do we see even more erosion of teachers and go more to automation and technology and remove the personal piece of it, right? And then what are those options after our boys either drop out or graduate from high school, don't go into the military? What are their options? Just kind of your thoughts on that. I gave you a whole bunch there.
Wow.
But this bill has, I think, one more Wednesday, and if there's not enough support, it's going to drop. So, one, I would ask you, would you support this bill? And if it doesn't make it this year, should you win, will you push and be one of those advocates that would sign on? This has bipartisan support. And then, I just wanted to get your thoughts.
This is wow.
And this is Washington State. This isn't nation. We're just talking about the state here.
Yeah, and I'm in awe. These numbers are staggering, and so high, and it's really disheartening to hear those numbers and everything. So would I support something like this? Yeah, it's crucial. It's crucial. I mean, again, you're looking at the male population. You're looking at males. You're looking at boys. You're looking at the timeline and where it all begins. And something has to be done. Something has to be addressed. And we need to stand up and take notice of what's going on, because, we have our youth who are taking their lives. And we need to understand what's going on and why that's happening and why it's happening in schools. Again, going back to what's taking place at home, what stress and pressures are they seeing?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact of that, and what are we missing at school? Because there's got to be signs and everything that's there, that's being taken. And then when you're looking at the aspect, when you take that human element out of the classroom, then you're no longer teaching humans, you're training. Because that's exactly what it is. Because you're putting on a program that is repetition and kind of robotic and saying, this is what this is what you need to learn.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why somebody thought this was important enough to put in here.
Mm-hmm.
not tying it into anything else, not tying it in. Well, if you do this, this is what could possibly happen to you and your family or your siblings. Um, and then the effect that it's going to have on your community as well. So, yeah, I would definitely support that. That would be something that, and when you get bipartisan support, that's saying a lot.
Yeah, this has bipartisan support. It just
It's-
may not
it's-
have enough of it, to push it through. But
It's saying a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, and when you look and you hear about certain things and issues, again, you don't necessarily hear males. There's no male aspect of it, and nothing against the women or anything as such. But we are a male population. We put more stress and pressure on ourselves because we're grouped and looked at. This is who you're supposed to be. This is what you're supposed to be like. This is who you're supposed to be like. This is what you're supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to do it. And this is where you should be doing it and leading it. You should be carrying me, not me carrying you.
Mm.
So, and depending on your family structure and your family situation, that starts at a young age.
It does.
And we put it off on our kids. And it's harsh, man. It's harsh because, you try to live up to expectations and everything. And we sometimes don't think about what we put on their shoulders
Mm.
when we expect these things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'll say this, and this is something that I want to share personally, because um, my son's battling depression. Didn't know, and I love him to death, and he teaches me because we had no idea of what he was battling in school and what he was going through because he was being bullied um, and picked on and made fun of at certain times because of the fact that he was different. But at home, the lashing out per se, and not understanding his concepts of what he was thinking and how he was thinking. And then, the best thing he did was inform us, that he was in a dark place. And this is why I love Birmingham High School, Dr. Bolden, and the guidance counselors there, because the teachers took notice and said, this is the difference that we see from last year to this year, what's going on and everything. And so we got him in to see a doctor. And then he went to some counseling and everything else. And, we caught it early enough because he was at a dark place. And, he was at a point, he's like, Dad, Mom, this is what I thought about doing. I'm not there. I'm not going to. But these thoughts and everything were in my head. And so we found, we got him in and, we got him on the right medication and everything. But I had no idea because I put expectations on him.
Mm-hmm.
He was feeling that. And then the expectations that he put on himself. And then the school, that life there that we're not in and we don't know, that he took pride in and didn't want to burden us.
Right.
And everything else. So we were lucky because, who knows where we would be today. But that's what I mean. You can't take the human element out of the classroom. It's important for it to be there. You need people like us to be there. And we need to look at everything as a whole, and especially on the male aspect of it, because, we're expected to be this, to represent this, to be strong, and not show weakness and everything. But we're human beings, and we need to connect and be there and support. So these numbers that you read off are just, it's staggering. I mean, I just like, wow.
And there's more. That was just a one pager snippet. I did a podcast on it for about an hour, talking about all the stats that were sent to me. And it's, I didn't know what the stats are. We know anecdotally that boys and men are suffering. We suffer in silence.
Yeah.
To have the actual numbers and to see the disparity, just the disparity. I'm saying it wrong. I'm tired. To see the range, the width, how far apart girls and boys are,
Right.
men and women are in suicide, alcohol death, drug death, homelessness, education. And the thing is that we've got a symbiotic relationship. And while we have to, continue to advocate for girls and women, we have to advocate for our boys and men. And, we hear about the patriarchy and it's evil and yada, yada, yada. But our boys are our boys.
Yeah.
Basically, they're being demonized just for being born male, right? And I know that your son is probably experiencing some of that at the high school, right? And what do you do with that? Where are you supposed to put that? When I'm just bad for existing, right?
Yeah.
I'm black on top of it. So, it's a tough way to go. And then we look at the school to prison pipeline. So is it there? Is it suicide, right? And, I can see your tears. So I know that's a dark place. That's where it can go, right?
Yeah. That's just truth and being real. I mean, you sit and you think about it. It's okay. Can I do this? And if I go this direction, I don't think I'm strong enough to survive.
Yeah.
So the easy way might be for me to just.
Yeah. And what's waiting for me on the other side? A job? Am I going to be able to pay $2,000 rent?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? Right. I appreciate you telling the story. And what is really tragic about this is in all the spaces, and we overlap in a lot of different spots.
We do.
Health equity, through Kitsap Public Health, NAACP, we're at different events. And I don't hear any other organizations talking about the boys.
No.
Talking about the men and how they're suffering, right?
Well, that's almost like taboo. You
Yeah.
can't. You're not supposed to.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. Because it needs to be discussed. More importantly, because when you get word that you hear a high school student that took his life, we say, "Oh, and oh my gosh," and what happened, and then it's not discussed anymore.
And think about it. I only finished in ninth grade, but for those that had great experiences in high school and went to prom, and I did go to 3 proms, but that's a whole other story.
Okay. We'll use that for another time.
That's another story. But for those that did have good experiences, right? Think about your high school experience, and maybe you had some, you had some breakups, and you had some things that weren't great, kind of the rites of passage. But what it would be from that experience to my only way out is to take my life. And that some of your fellows, students, some of our kids or our fellow parents' children are going through that and thinking that, while others are planning for Tolo and prom and for cheerleading and basketball and all the things, right? That some kids are just really suffering and hanging on, and some give up the ghost, because they don't see a way out. That's a crazy thought. The dichotomy of that of experience and that.
Yeah, you're right.
Thank you for that. That is.
Well, I mean, I can't speak if I don't know, and if it's true, and if it's relevant, and and I think that's one of the good qualities I have is because I have a lot of relevance, and understanding, what's taking place and what's going on, because I know someone that's been there or I've been there. or I'm seeing this and it's being discussed and trying to figure it out. Or you're bringing something to my attention that needs to be discussed and brought out. So, and thank you for that, because, you know, that's a good piece, and that's that mental behavioral aspect of it. When is the last time, and ask yourself, if you're a parent, when is the last time that you sat down and had a heart to heart with your child? Um, you know, it's hard because we're so busy in our lives and everything, and we think that everything is okay at school because they don't talk about it or anything. So now we make it a point in our house, to ask, how was your day?
Mhm.
How are you doing?
Mhm.
What's going on at school and everything? To have that conversation, because it's vital,
Yeah.
and it can save a life, and you just don't know. So and that's a little personal thing, as a parent and everything. But again, the male aspect of it, we carry that traditional weight.
And I take it this is contemporary. This is recent. So
Yes.
you're doing all the things. You've got a son who's struggling. You've got a little bit the baby
Yeah.
that is struggling physically,
Mhm.
and you're going through all that all at the same time, and still going to work, and still doing NAACP, and still going to the meetings. Right? You didn't miss a beat. You were there for Project Connect, right? Which is next week. Shout out to Project Connect.
That's
right?
it,
You
baby.
were there,
Doing
right?
it. I'm doing it.
Still doing it
Yeah.
all. And we all knew about your daughter, right? Because that was on Facebook, and remember the food and all that. But your son, that was more of a silent piece.
That is the silent piece.
But there's a silence with you too, right? Your son is going through something silently that's coming out, but you're also silent about that. And people are like, how the hell did he make it through just the daughter and doing all this stuff? And now you're hearing about the son too. It's like, well, damn, Superman. What, is your cape in the clean?
I don't know about that Superman thing, but and this is where I'm lucky enough, because I have a beautiful wife in Danielle, that I love and adore, and I'm blessed. I am so blessed to have the opportunity, and I think this is why I think this is my calling, because I've been doing public community all my life. From the time I went into the military, from me going out and running down the street to my best friend's house when I was a little kid, going back to the military, and then doing this. The thing is that I've seen and done so much and lived through so much, and understand those dark places and the mental aspect of it and the behavioral aspect of it. The medical side of things with my daughter twice, because when she was first born, she was incubated as a baby, and she spent 90 days in the NICU along with Danielle. And that's how I know that she's blessed to be here, and then to go through that process 3 years later. So I'm a walking testimony. So, but I love my community. And if I can do this, then I know anybody can do this. It's just a matter of giving them the opportunity and the resources to be able to do that. You may have some people sit there and say, I'm not qualified to do and run, that I don't need to be up there in the house because I don't have the qualifications to be there. What qualifications do you need? Because I'm sorry, I think I have the qualifications of being there, because I'm bringing what you're asking to be told, which is the relevance and the relationships of the stories and the purpose and the whys. That's what I'm bringing. And the difference is I'm bringing it in a minority perspective and a veteran. And so, and I believe that this is the first, and I would be the first Black veteran to be elected into this position.
Wow. So you'd be
So
making history on
again,
top
I'll
of
be
it.
making history on top of that.
Wow.
And then breaking down the barriers, because if I could do this,
Mhm.
why can't somebody else? Why can't someone else do this? I don't have a master's degree. I'm not a lawyer. But I've served. I've walked the sands of Iraq to come back and walk these streets here in Bremerton, in Paulsville, to support my, Native friends at the tribe and be there and march alongside to do that. So how am I not qualified, as some people would like to say? So, that's just me. And because I love what I do, and I do it for my family as well as my community.
Mm. Well, that would be the way to end, but I can't end without asking you some questions about Black Americans and this and what you will do and how you will represent us once you get there. Me and several others here in this community believe that reparations are owed to foundational Black Americans. Actually, we will be putting out a statement. It's being refined right now. We'll be asking the City Council to approve that resolution. We'll also be trying to take that to Olympia also. But we believe that that is one of the United States' original sin, aside from what they did to the indigenous here, and they have not atoned for that. Um, so I want to get your take on, do you agree with foundational Black Americans being owed reparations? Is that something that you would advocate for? Should you find yourself elected? Uh, and, I'm not really interested in so much saying, oh, this city should pay reparations or the state should. I think federally is what we're looking at.
Mhm.
I just want to get your thoughts on reparations. One, do you support it? Two, I guess, in what capacity do you? Because we've never had this conversation.
No, we've never had this conversation. Do I support it? Yes, I do support it. I think that, you look back and you see, the true history of this nation and what this nation has done um, to its melting pot. Um, but most importantly, what has happened with the Black community. Yeah, it's nothing like growing up and seeing, a cross being burned in the yard, um, being called names and everything, telling, someone telling you to go back to your motherland. And, you're sitting there thinking, well, what do you mean? Because, you're a kid.
Mhm.
But the battle and the struggle and the fact that, in some cases, how the hell did we survive? So, yeah, I believe that wholeheartedly.
You said it an hour ago, right? They're trying to rewrite history now.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, we're here. This is what we did, you know, and I sit there and education, being a part of that. And I said, you know what? We didn't get on a boat or a speedboat to come visit America and say, oh, we're going to be here. We were taken. So that's what that is. That's the truth. And that's it. And that's documented everywhere. But you don't hear it. You don't see it anymore. So yeah, I fully support that. 100%. Because, some type of respiration, I can't say that word, but it needs to be done, to be accountable, holding America accountable, um, in that aspect of it. So yeah, I'm definitely strongly on board on that. And where we're at right now and going forward, because again, you look at it, um, we're standing on the backs of those who came before us in that foundation, because without that, we wouldn't be sitting here today. having this conversation and being able to do what we're doing.
Well, the United States wouldn't be what it was, right? I mean,
No,
they had a tobacco industry, and slavery
no,
allowed cotton
to be
to
done and the
become this,
gin.
yeah,
Yeah,
to
and I
take
mean,
over and become a
exactly,
world power.
exactly. So when you sit and you look at it, yeah, um, it is that in that aspect in that time frame. It definitely. And you look at it across the federal level. I mean, we're still dealing with what we deal with today. You know, walking down the street, you know, with my kids at one time in Paulsville, being called the names,
Mm.
and then making sure that my family can get to a place that's safe, where I have to sit here and stop just to make sure certain
Wow,
people,
wow,
you know,
yeah,
ain't following behind.
yeah.
You know, and then being told, you know, go back to your motherland. You don't need to be here. You don't deserve to be here. Yeah. So we still go through it.
Mhm.
We still go through it. But it ain't gonna deter me. It ain't gonna stop me. I'm still gonna do what I do. Um, and that's what that is. But yes, I fully support that and something definitely it should be done.
So let me ask you this, and we'll get you out of here on this last question here. Uh, do you have anything specific that you're thinking about advocating for Black Americans here in your district? And then also with the stats that I showed you about boys and men, understand that disproportionately those affect Black males. So when you look at the national numbers, uh, Black males are the most homeless, right? We look at prison and all the different numbers that are there. It affects us. Uh, we're worse off than every other demographic. And so that is borne out to be true here also, right?
Right.
And
Right.
not just men here. So I'm just talking about Black people
Mhm.
in particular. But do you have anything that you are pushing toward and advocating for where it's like, look, we need to focus on uh, Black Americans that are in Kitsap County, in this district, number two, because all of these reasons, right? Uh, that's my question to you.
That's a great question. Um, to totally focus on, and no, I don't. My goal is to bring us to the table so that we can have the conversations that you're asking me about, to be able to address them and address them in a proper way.
And let me add, Kitsap Public Health has labeled, racism a healthcare issue,
Healthcare
right?
issue and
So
crisis. Yeah.
they've made some progress there. Uh, KCR, the county has created buy-in-fors for rental assistance when COVID. Uh, we went through COVID. My nonprofit was one of those buy-in-fors, right? And for those that don't know what a buy-in-for is, it's basically for Black people, by Black people for Black people, by the BIPOC community for the BIPOC community. And why that was is they were looking at the numbers of the people who were getting served, and we're finding that even though the Black community, low income, or the indigenous community, Pacific Islander community was this percentage of the population, they were experiencing these hardships at a higher clip, but that wasn't being represented when they were coming into getting services.
Right.
So that was the uh, active work of trying to address those issues. And so knowing that those are definitely issues, are Black men and women coming out of jail or prison. And now it's like, well, you got a criminal record, I'm not going to rent to you. You got a bad rental history, I ain't going to rent to you. You got a bankruptcy or your credit's bad, I ain't going to rent to you. Well, that is going to affect us disproportionately than it's going to affect others. So, hearing that and kind of putting all that together, I'm hearing you say you don't have anything specific. Is there anything that kind of comes to mind, um, aside from bringing us to the table and saying, okay, what's happening? What do I need to advocate for?
I mean, when you say it like that, then yeah, you want to sit, and I want to sit and know, the educational piece, the financial status of that as well. There's a pilot program in Tacoma that's being done for just first-time Black homeowners, where there's a program out there for those to go through and receive specific type of funding and resources, just because of the fact of the disparity between the Black homeowners and the white homeowners. So when you sit there and you say this, yeah, most definitely, because I think that's something that needs to be addressed, because we feel it. And when we feel it, because now we're becoming such a bigger community, and we invest so much within our community, and we feel that. So, which leads to that hardship that you were discussing and everything else. So, yeah, I would definitely sit there and look at it, and I would, talk to those officials that are in key positions and find out what those numbers are, and address that head on. And then look at possibly making and getting a bill in place to address those. So that way, we're at the forefront, we're at the table, and instead of, kind of over here on the side waiting to see what that ripple effect's going to bring. Because I see that when I'm out walking, and when you're out walking in a community and you don't have that minority person leading that walk, they should be, because they're the ones, and that's their community, and they're the ones that are being affected the most. So that is something that, yeah, I mean, I think about that. I think about that every day, because again, you look at the Black business owners in the area, and what they have to go through in order to get that business going. And then the study and everything that I've seen with Navy Federal, talking about, how their loan process worked, and this big discrimination between those who were getting turned away and those with the same qualifications as the white.
They got the money, they got the credit, they got everything.
And they go,
yeah.
I was reading that, and I just was like, wow. And this is a military associated bank that's doing this. So,
and that's a systemic piece of it, right? That's hidden, and it's like,
yeah.
well, Black folks just ain't, the credit's bad, they don't have the down payment. It is what it is. Yeah. It's like, well, actually, no, this is what it is over here.
Exactly.
So then, and this has been going on for how long? Yeah. And like you said, it's Navy Fed, so they doing it to their own people. Like, wow,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I love about this new program. Because I co-chair the Equity Advisory Committee for the Puget Sound Regional Committee for a reason, and they just had a presentation on this program that's for Black homeowners to go through and understanding. And now this is getting funded, and it's a pilot program, but it's again for Blacks, and they're showing them and teaching them the process and the right process of going through and getting a house. Because at first it's like, you need to run your credit, you need to run your credit, you need to run your credit. And looking at this, no, no, you don't. You're not supposed to, because you take a hit every time and everything. And so, and they're like, no, if it's legit, you don't do that until you're at this point already in the process. So there's and this is the one good thing about it, because things like this is being addressed. Now, granted, it's over in Pierce County and I think in King County for now. But if this goes the way
someone's got to start,
exactly, and that just opens it up, and then it goes to what you're saying, because again, it needs to be addressed. It needs to be in the forefront, because Black business owners have to battle and go through and make sure everything is done and cut and dry to a T, and everything, because you got to do it twice as good, twice as hard as the average white person. And and again, that is because of the system that's in place and those people who are overseeing that system that are still there to keep it in place.
Well, should you be elected, we would like to see you disrupt that system. So,
I've always shaken tail feathers and rattled trees, and that's what I intend to do, because you can't get nowhere without a good, solid conversation about all. Because, like I said, I have that different aspect now than you don't have that up there, from this district, because you're seeing it through a different lens, different eyes. And, I represent everybody across the board. And that's exactly what I plan to do, and how I plan to do it. So, but again, this is me. This is who I am. And this is what I love to do.
well, let me tell you, one, I appreciate you coming, make yourself available. It's Friday night. You said you had a hard day. What time is it? Is it 9:30?
Yeah.
Man, we've been going for 3 hours straight.
We've been at it, man.
3 hour
And
podcast,
look, it's like sitting at home talking with your best
Hey,
friend.
still good. Hey, I appreciate that. Still got several people watching. Oh, I'm gonna do something different, right? I ran, and there's these, events where it's kind of just rapid fire. You got 60 seconds to answer, right? And life isn't in a vacuum like that. You need space to, it's like wine. You need to let it breathe and have a conversation and talk about it and really, get to the crux of what people are thinking and where their mind is at. And so I appreciate you sitting here and doing this. I will reach out to your opponent, Greg Nance, and have him on and ask him similar questions. But we can do something different. And you said they'll come if you build it, and we just got to build it. This is it. So I appreciate you. I appreciate all the work you've done in the community. I've seen you firsthand as student body president. Well, before you were student body president, right? I've seen you before then,
you did,
and then step into that role and just kind of your ascension is like this, So it's like
I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to keep up with you and everybody else.
But again, and I believe you're older than I am, right?
Yeah.
I'll be 51 Wednesday.
I got 6 on you, brother.
Whoa.
57.
57. All right.
57.
Why I bring up his age is this was what, 6 years ago now that we were at OC, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that made you 50. You're not too old. Do not say no to yourself. What I loved about the beginning of what you said was God took all the no's away. There was no more reasons to say no. You may be sitting there in your life and you are trying to find reasons to say no, and there's no no's left. So be bold. And if Shannon wasn't bold in all the things that he's done over the conversation of his life of getting out of the military and all those struggles, he wouldn't be here today in a position to run and to be seen as a leader, someone who is trusted, a go-to, someone who's dependable, right? So don't say no to yourself, and understand you have so much untapped potential. And it's not that you wasted it in your youth. You still have it. You have wisdom in your later years. Okay, that's it for me. I'm gonna put the camera on you and give you the final word, your final appeal to the people, and why they should vote for you.
Well, I will say this. A vote for me is definitely a vote for community. It's a vote for a voice, a true voice, with a different set of lenses, a different aspect, but somebody who has showed up, who has been there, who has walked the walk and stood side by side and watched those cry and hold those up that will cry. It's time to have that voice and that perspective put out in the forefront. So, I truly believe that I bring that perspective. I bring those relationships. I bring that history. I bring that fortitude because, again, I know how to battle. I wear the armor each and every day to show up um, and to work. I love to work because I love my community. And if I can do better, that makes my community a lot better in that aspect of it. And that's all I want to do is just make my community better. And I can do that to be that leader, to be out in the front, to lead my community in that upper plane, as you like to say. Um, but again, it's also a chance to make history. We're always breaking the glass ceiling in one way, shape, or form here. We've seen that with Representative Simmons. You know, it's a possibility for me to do that with being a veteran and the first black male, all in the same one. And that veteran piece. Um, you know, this is, I like to say, a military district because we have the Navy and understanding that population and what it's like to have someone who has served and a family and that struggle between that. I understand how that is because I went through that. So I understand the pains and the struggle and the sacrifices that the family has to make to ensure that the husband doesn't have to worry about that or the father doesn't have to worry about that and everything's taken care of back here. So, you know, the spouses and the family members are true heroes because they're that hope to come back home to, which again makes us strong in the community. Uh, so, in that aspect of it all, you know, let's turn it up. Let's get right.
Let's turn it up. You know, the word of the night, I believe, is community. Because I wrote it down. I'm taking notes while you're talking, and I wrote it in all caps because you said it so many times. And so it sounds like community is what is truly important to you. You have shown that in the things that you've done. And again, like I said, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for all the work that you've done here in this community. Thank you for your service.
Yeah. By all means, community is unity. And when you unify something, you make it stronger. It can't be broken. And when it gets tested and pushed against, it pushes back as a whole, not as an individual. So, you know, community is unity, and we can turn it up like that. So,
and I would say, you know, if you have people that you don't care for or you don't like, you can dislike them. But if they have an idea that you agree with, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So my biggest op, if they say something that I think is right, I got to support it because it's right. I'm not going to, you know, just say, oh, no, because that person said it, they're wrong, right? We're not going to get anywhere that way.
No, we're not. No, we're not.
Man, where's my camera? Camera 3. All right, y'all, you have just watched our conversation with Shannon Turner. Shannon Turner running for
State Representative, position number 2.
Woo! You can check him out where at?
Elect Shannon Turner, vote Shannon Turner.
All right, it's there on the website for you. Please check out his webpage and follow him. You'll see him all over Kitsap County and even more as it comes closer to time. Sir, you have an open mic anytime you need to come by and let us know what's going on and get something off your chest, share some information.
That's right.
Again, we appreciate you. I am R1 Cameron. This is the Conduit Network. We will be back soon. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Until next time.